preparation these runners have done for this match. They've had 2 weeks to get through their previous matchups. Well, we'll get started.
Yeah, we did see them using the practice ROM earlier on before they started. So they're squeezing in that last little bit. Oh wow, what a treat!
Who needs an uncle?
Yeah, we could just skip Uncle at this point. They've already got the hammer, but they will get one of the other weapons at Uncle. So we're going in with 2 weapons. At this point, I think bombs is probably the best thing they get since they won't have to farm for them.
Yeah, that'd be one of those scenarios where you actually do want a bomb start. Hammer is kind of funny in my opinion because the uncle said he was going to watch the moth tutorial, and I mean, if you're going to do hammer moth, I think the uncle's trying to be a fast speedrunner. We're going to get burned today, though.
Well, that is disappointing to find, and without the hammer, that would be really difficult.
That A-drop for P-Train, though.
Well, they essentially just did get their bombs from Uncle. We're close enough, and Siempe got it too.
Oh my god! So we got bombs all day. We are not going to need to farm for any, and they're not going to use any either. The hammer is a really effective weapon. It does the same amount of damage as a tempered sword. So great drops for both of our runners here.
Absolutely. One of the most difficult parts of the escape sequence, especially with magic consuming items like Burna, is the fact that you have to farm for at least 1 bomb in order to pick up the last 3 items in the back of escape. If you don't find a bomb from any of these enemies, you're going to have to do a backtrack. So 8 bombs lets them get those 3 chests and all of Kakariko without having to pick up anything else.
Yeah, so at this point I'm wondering what else can we find to make this faster? Flute? Boots? I mean...
Well, the flute and the bottle are 2 things that are nice to pick up before Kakariko because you can route them in without having to backtrack. Other than that, I think just general mobility items like the boots, it's something that no runner's ever going to say no to.
Oh, so we haven't found the map yet. We can't do any kind of process elimination on that sanctuary chest yet, but we will have a few more opportunities to check that. We have the vanilla boomerang room coming up here for P-Train. We'll see that item on his screen first. And that is our small key for the back half of Escape. So we definitely know that besides the map, there are at least 4 more items to find.
Yeah, I'm not really even sure what to hope for at this point. They're off to such a good start. That hammer by itself, both a weapon and it's a significant progression item.
A part of me thinks that, after you've already been given bombs and a fantastic drop, and you have the hammer, it would almost be right if the game didn't give you anything in the back half of Escape.
That would be fair. Both of our runners are opting to use the pot strats on the Chain Guard Knight, 2 pot hits. The hammer does equal damage there, but playing a little safe and picking up the blue mail. So we got our first mail upgrade already.
Yeah, and I agree with the safety of throwing those pots. That ball and chain guard before you pick up that blue mail will do 1 heart of damage every time he hits you. And if you're not feeling too comfortable with the very small hitbox that is the hammer, it makes a lot of sense to do it. They're right there and pretty easy to do. You only lose a couple seconds.
Absolutely, that's common even until you're at the very high end of NMG to use those pots. So definitely can't blame them for that. Blue mail, for anybody who's not familiar with the way Randomizer works, swords, mail, and shields, they use a progressive system. So you will always find one increment up from where you're currently at. So runners can find mail or sword items in different locations. You'll never go from green to red or from fighter to gold, unlike the very, very early versions of Randomizer.
That also applies to shields as well. So there are a lot of progressive items that our runners, will find incrementally. We haven't found a shield yet either, interestingly enough.
Yeah, the thing about shields is unless you find them in chests, a lot of times people don't even pick them up. They introduce some lag, and outside of a very few isolated spots, there's not too much utility in them.
Yeah, probably the most useful one would be the fire shield or the magic shield, which will block against some fireballs, but beyond that, really not much use. I agree with that entirely.
Yeah, the game can require the shield to be part of the logic for completion purposes, such as making the mirror shield available for Turtle Rock Laser Bridge, but players can choose to skip that and use other methods.
Yeah, if you have any kind of invulnerability, Burna, Cape, or if you're good at dashing, all of those can get you past the laser bridge. Kind of interesting that we're talking about that at 5 minutes in, though. Randomizer really does have a tendency to lead ourselves all around Hyrule.
Absolutely. Well, but we're talking about the way that the progression works, and shields is definitely a part of that. So far, they just got the a 5-bomb upgrade. So no more progression items, but we're starting in on the capacity upgrades.
I'll tell you, it feels satisfying, I have to imagine, to use the hammer against those rats. I mean, you don't have to throw a bomb at all.
And we're picking up our first sword in the back of Escape, and 300 rupees. A lot of value there. And
Absolutely.
And the map, of course, does mean, like you're saying, that there will be an item in Sanctuary, so we're not quite done yet.
One of the nice things about a sword, I mean, great weapon to have. Hammer's much stronger overall, but has a way less forgiving hitbox. As far as the sword goes, the only progression directly locked behind the level 1 sword are just the curtains that you can open at Skull Woods, and of course the back of Aghanim, where you enter that fight. Other than that, nothing else is directly blocked by that level, although level 2 sword does unlock quite a lot.
Well, the fighter sword does unlock your ability to use medallions as well.
That's true.
It's something that you occasionally will be faced with, but most of the time, by the time you get to Misery Mire or Turtle Rock, you're going to have something better than Fighter Sword, or at least you're going to hope you have something better than Fighter Sword.
Absolutely on that one. Well, interestingly enough, P-Train will be going to check the Lumberjack Cave area. This also allows us to check the Tree Pole and potentially the Hoarder as well. Looks like Siempe is going to do the same thing.
And just 4 hearts from our Tier 2 Tree Pole. There are 3 potential prizes you can pick up there, depending on the number of enemies you've killed. Tier 2 is killing 4 enemies with having taken damage. That's the most common one we see. We also get a bush crab check, and that's 4 bombs, so they're maxing up at 20 now.
Yeah, that's an amazing find. The 8-drop we had earlier probably made that somewhat irrelevant, but if we hadn't picked up that sword, we'd be pretty happy to find that bush crab.
Just a red rupee and lumberjack cave, so they're definitely not coming back for that item later on.
Yep, for those of you new to the game, we would dash into that tree after destroying Aghanim, and that would then give us access to that item. We would need boots to get to it, but being that it's a big 20, no big deal. Wow, and we have a lift upgrade in Lost Woods. That's a really nice early find. That's going to open up a whole lot of the world to us.
Absolutely. Combined with the hammer, they're only a moon pearl away from Dark World access at less than 8 minutes in.
And you did mention before that a bottle would give us the sick hit in Kakariko Town. We found green goo here in the thieves' hideout in Lost Woods.
That having a bottle with magic and the Cane of Burna puts other locations that require invincibility into the logic as well. We're getting ahead of ourselves, of course, but logically, they have Spike Cave access.
That is really early to have that access. Well, so the closest available check to us is Blind's Hut, or properly named the Thieves' Hideout here in Kakariko Village. This is going to have 5 items. The next place they're probably going to head is the Well, but we have a bow in Thieves' Hideout. Holy smokes.
Well, we got a quick map check, and I saw that Eastern was the red pendant, Hera was a crystal, didn't see what desert was. Bow normally would incline our players to take a little early check in Eastern, since it becomes completable. But it being a pendant, they might put it off for a bit.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about having a lot of progression available to you early in the seed, is you have a lot of choices to make, and some of them are going to be based either on item density, others based on how much you can complete the dungeon. As our runners finish up Kakariko here, they're going to have some interesting choices to make here.
And we find the flute in the well, so that is a great place to find it. They can activate it with 0 backtracking.
Say hello to all of the light world. If
Absolutely.
we can fake Flipper.
That gives them logically Death Mountain access now without having the lamp. Of course, without the hookshot or mirror, they can only check 2 spots. but they are able to get up there at least, and wave around, say hi, get the nice vantage point.
We also have a lot of rupees.
We're very, very well off on rupees. Siempe already has enough to make a visit up to Zora. A lot of times when players will complete the Kakariko area, we see our first save and quit. But with the flute, they're just able to flute and pick their next location.
Well, that's your national anthem, folks. With that, the goose is loose, and we're still checking various chests here in Kakariko Village. No point in going off to another distant land just yet. But Chicken Shack here is going to have some good meals and a big 20.
So unless they find something significant in these last remaining locations, most likely I anticipate that they're going to make the South Shore route. They'll be able to flute directly to 7. They'll be able to pick up the 2 dam items and the mini Moldorm Cave items. And from there, most likely, we'll get the pointer of where they're going to go next.
Yeah, and I agree with you that there's, a south side check makes a lot of sense in this particular scenario. And they're not finding much in the remainder of Kakariko. P-Train finding the most valuable thing in the second half there, which was, those 300 rupees. That'll at least make sure that we can do Zora and potentially Palace of Darkness later.
Absolutely, they're mostly set on rupees as far as NPC requirements are concerned. As long as they don't need to buy any potions, we just got a 5-hour upgrade from the sick kid. Nothing significant there.
We have a shovel in the library. That's kind of interesting. We need boots for that.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's good or bad. It's a fetch quest item at a fetch quest location. So can't say I'm thrilled to see that shovel there.
I like the idea of both of these runners, though, to check south of Kakariko. This is really important intel. Race game, a Sphere 1 location, very easy to forget it if you flute away. But we'll get a desert check as well on P-Train.
And we see the most valuable remaining item, the Moon Pearl, up there on the desert ledge. So we know that we're going to find the mirror or the Book of Medora very soon.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about that, is if we don't find the Book of Medora, the only way to get to that Moon Pearl is to be in bunny mode with those Titan's mitts and mirror, and then warp into that spot.
Siempe, so P-Train took a look at the race location. Siempe went directly for it. You tend to see a lot of mixed opinions there. If you're low on items or you're low on money and you have a lot of bombs, sometimes it's nice just to go for it and take the gamble.
And of course, everybody's got a wildly different opinion on that. I tend to agree with you that it's worth it to go after it if you have those conditions. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to have extra rupees. We could buy potions later. Plenty of things that we can do, like the chess game, the digging game, all of which do require a fair amount of rupees. We also found the swag net here in the dam.
Yeah, the net is one of my favorite items to find early in the game because it's so easy to forget that you have it. You don't notice it till later on. And we find the lamp at the dam. Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's a 1,000,000 candle power lamp right there. So that's going to help shine some light into some dark places for these runners. And it's very welcome find in the light world early on.
The lamp combined with the gloves, will give them full ability to complete desert, assuming well, I was going to say assuming they get the book, but knowing the Moon Pearl's there, either method of getting in the desert, they'll be able to complete it now.
I think the only thing that we're not sure about yet is whether or not it's boots locked, but it might not be.
That's a good point. A key on the torch could still prevent them from completing it.
But I mean, at this rate, you almost think you're going to find those boots pretty soon.
I would not be surprised.
Well, mini Moldorm's full of love.
More money and love. The lamp also, of course, puts all of Eastern Palace logically in completion now. Like we said before, red pendant, so not crystal progression, but with all of the items over in that eastern area, and now being able to logically complete the dungeon, it increases its relative value.
And there are several items to get from that dungeon, so whether or not we are concerned about, pendants or not, it's still valuable to check it. And from what I can see here, I mean, Ice Rock Cave is the last one that we can check. we can get potentially one item from Death Mountain if we don't have the mirror, and we don't. So pulling out that flute here in the Ice Rod Cave, I think Siempe has the same idea.
Vanilla Ice Rod in the Ice Rod Cave.
So we don't know what Turtle Rock is yet, but that's a find.
Well, neither of them are going to be happy to see that, though.
No, I can't imagine anybody really feels that great about that.
So Siempe, having the lamp now, is able to flute directly to one and rescue the old man without having to do a sequence break. That is going to give him, of course, an item, but equally important, the best of the 3 starting locations up here on Death Mountain. Full health refill and being able to flute away.
Yeah, you can do that the fastest from the mountain cave. That's a really good point, and something for runners out there to keep in mind. Now, I'm kind of wondering, I mean, this is starting to smell a lot like Vanilla Mirror, too.
Definitely a possibility. We're going to find out right now on Siempe's side. We're seeing a different play from P-Train. Looks like he's heading up to Eastern. We're going to get our first chance to see what 3 items Sash is holding.
Yes, so Hazrula has those 3 items for now, and then eventually can give us a green pendant item when we do collect that. So this is a great item density play. He has at least 7 things he can get here.
We got a little of an old man progression battle here. The Death Mountain old man didn't give us anything. Let's see what the Eastern old man gives us.
In the back of Sahazrula's storage unit, we have a little bit of love, some money, and some bombs. He is a hoarder today.
Both of them are. So no aid from the elderly, and nothing on Death Mountain. Just capacity upgrades and the fighter shield, and like we said earlier, they're not going to go out of their way for that fighter shield.
No, not at all. I mean, even if you're feeling a little bit sheepish about your execution, that's still not very valuable. You can block some arrows with that sword. That's it, or with that shield.
Absolutely. P-Train heading into Eastern. Siempe most likely going to be right on his heels. Eastern is one of those Sphere 1 locations, meaning that they're able to access these chests right from the beginning of the game. It kind of makes them a little bit more valuable than later game chests in the sense of early progression. So even being a pendant, you don't want to miss these spots if you can route it in.
And that's another interesting point is that it does take some time to go up to Death Mountain. Something that Siempe, oh wow, Canis Maria.
Samaria.
That's an amazing find right away. And we can complete the dungeon anyway, so no big deal if we happen to find the last one on Armos. But I'm thinking that, P-Train made a really smart heads-up play here to go to Eastern Palace first, knowing he could complete it. Death Mountain, you want to avoid going up there as many times as possible, trying to do as much of that in one run as you can.
Absolutely. Siempe can reasonably expect that if he finds the mirror at one of the 3 locations one of the 2 locations that he can check on Death Mountain, that will allow him to progress on to Hera, and then of course with the hammer he'll be able to get the East Death Mountain. Even without finding that progression, he does unlock that critical save point, so he's not going to have to take the flute up there next time.
That's true, and of course, not having access to the rest of Death Mountain, he's not going to waste time going to places that don't end up giving much of anything. So it's a very quick check to make. Early on in the game, not as punishing to do, but later on in the game, that stuff like that could cost our racers.
Absolutely, and you can't discount the value of the knowledge that the runners gain. Knowing that there isn't the necessary progression item in one of those easy to check places.
That's a critical thing to bring up because knowledge is power in this randomizer. A lot of times our runners will check the same locations whether they do it now or later. How they get to these locations being kind of the most important thing as far as time goes. But having this knowledge means that we're going to make more heads-up decisions. Siempe has a little bit more available to him, knowing that Eastern Palace has to have something progression for him.
So one thing that's interesting is having already found where the Moon Pearl is, we can guess that the Aghanim Tower play is most likely not going to be required. The only way that could be required is if the mirror itself or the Book of Mordor were on the pyramid. Those are the only things that they could potentially find progression that way. And of course, they would still need to get another sword or the cape in order to complete that. So that's looking less and less likely as we proceed.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that because I mean there are a couple of different ways we could get there, but we only really have one or two potential checks here in Eastern Palace. I wonder if both of these runners are going to finish off Armos regardless.
Well, you're this far into the dungeon. You've picked up all the chests. I haven't been counting, so I don't know if there's an item left on Armos, or if we know that by this point.
I think it looks like it.
Yeah, we've seen the map so far. The map was in the big chest. P-Train's heading that way. It's a quick check, and you never know. You might need that pendant.
Now, if it turns out that there's only one potential item remaining in Eastern based on P-Train's count, he could be taking a gamble here to see if it's on the big key chest or not, which Siempe is going to check right now. It's an interesting gamble to make. It does not take long to get back to Armos. He's already almost all the way there. And Siempe, same story, so this would be a big loss or a big win for either of these runners. No in between.
Absolutely. Checking this vanilla big key chest when you're making your Eastern trip I think it is actually a significant time savings. Both players did it because they knew this is where the big key was. If you end up skipping it, it's really a long walk to get back to. So P-Train heading into Armos has found every other item in the dungeon, so this will be done at this point. We saw him practicing this beforehand, was having a little bit of trouble in the practice round, but did a flawless execution and picks up the hook shot.
Well, I think we know where we're going next, right?
Yeah, we're definitely not going to the Swamp Palace.
We will see the east side of Death Mountain, though, and that's going to give us at least 7 items on the right side. Actually, 8 with the Spiral Cave, and with the hammer, we can now go to Hera.
And we needed progression at this point because every other location had been checked. So it had to be either Dark World access or something that unlocked, something like Eastern Death Mountain.
It's definitely good news to have Eastern Palace be the kind of pendant that you have to clear out, though. This is a very fast dungeon.
Well, they got the bow, they got the lamp, everything was in logic, so the seed was definitely pointing them in that direction for people who like to think the seed is sentient.
I'm certainly one of those people. But in regards to making decisions, there's another thing that our runners, may at some point consider. They do have a few locations they can potentially check with sequence breaks. The fake flippers being the biggest thing. So we'll see when we're done with Death Mountain here whether or not that's an appealing option for our runners. But they have both followed the logic so far, so this seems to be working out pretty well so far.
So Jeff pointing out that, of course, Zora is technically an item that they can check, but he's so far out of the way, and he's so cruel in general. I don't blame runners for not going up there. And, as I said early on, and then, of course, forgot, Spike Cave is in logic. But the East Death Mountain has so many more items. That's the better play.
Well, so interesting that we see between both P-Train and Siempe, looking at pretty much the same time spent here on Death Mountain. P-Train did opt to go after that shield, and as it turns out, I think Siempe is going to be a little bit ahead here.
Yeah, but in Randomizer, until you're an hour and a half in and go mode, ahead is a very relative term.
That's absolutely true. But in terms of progression, our runners are dead even right now. They have found everything that the other has found. The only difference in item collection, I believe, P-Train having picked up that shield.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to ask P-Train, for going out of his way to pick up that shield, whether he was hoping, maybe later on to find the mirror shield specifically or the fire shield, and this was the necessary progression, or if he wanted the fighter shield in and of itself.
And this actually could be related to the progression we talked about before, how, Laser Bridge. I mean, maybe P-Train doesn't feel very comfortable with Laser Bridge skip, or maybe doesn't want to hedge his bets that he'll have magic to do Cane of Burna. But that could be one reason to pick up those shields.
Absolutely. Being a progressive shield, you're going to have to get the first 2 if you want the third.
Well, Paradox Cave, first 2 chests wasn't big, just a little bit of love. Let's see what these 5 back here have.
And Titan's mitts.
Yeah, that's probably what we want to find alongside that half magic. Wow.
Well, we got our Paradox Hype, Titan's Mist, Half Magic, and the Book of Medora, so they will be able to access Desert now.
And you know what's funny about that is that, you know, we don't have the mirror, so we're going to have to take the long way into Desert, actually. But at least we have the flute to get there quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, they would definitely like to find or have had the Moon Pearl at this point, so they could complete the dark side of Death Mountain. Without the Moon Pearl, you know, they're going to have to double back here later on. But finding all of those items, that's not nothing.
The good news for them, too, is that they know their opponent will have to do the exact same thing. So I would think in their shoes right now that you feel like you're pretty much lockstep with your opponent, which they pretty much are.
Absolutely, there really hasn't been any opportunity for any significant divergence. We're seeing P-Train heading over to Tower of Hera, and
you know what's interesting is Siempe could check actually the Turtle Rock requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. He can check it. You know, that would definitely be a time sink though, because without the mirror, he'd have to save and quit and climb all the way back up here if he wants to do Hera. But if he wants to go over and check Desert, then he can simply save and quit and go to Desert. So that would be a very good way to route that in.
Now we're also finding out using the Book of Medora, we don't have a Master Sword to get the item from the tablet, but the Ether tablet had just a quiver upgrade, so we're going to skip that and never come back.
Always a great idea to gain that knowledge, even if you can't get the item.
Absolutely, and the bomb bag not being too valuable for Siempe, so the Spiral Cave at the slow pace without boots, very big time sink. If P-Train were to check that later with boots, that's a time gain for P-Train.
So it looks like Siempe is climbing back up the mountain. The question, of course, is whether it's Hera or whether we're going to get the Turtle Rock Medallion check. Most likely, I'm going to say Hera. That's the logical sense.
Yeah, from what you're describing, it'd be really easy to go to Hera and then come right back to do that check and then save and quit if you're going to leave the mountain anyway.
What I'll be curious to see is if they remember to include Spike Cave after completing Hera. Spike Cave, you know, now being in the logic and completable, is you know, it's right there under Hera, and it's a terminal location, so they were going to save and quit anyway. It's good to do it at the end of a location like Spike Cave.
That's a really good point, too, and with their half magic, it's a lot easier and more appealing to do than it normally would be. P-Train's having a little trouble with the camera screen there, not able to actually hit the switch until it's on screen.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can probably toss a Samaria block over there, and I think that would hit it.
Yeah, certain sprites don't stay on screen or persist depending on it. I think Samaria is one of them that can. Bombs are a certain distance from Link.
Red Boomerang works. You could also, of course, go down the stairs and hit the switch block again. That would work. But I'm opting for the Death Warp. You know, he's not losing any time. He's right there at the beginning.
Oh, you know, chat reminding us we haven't picked up that Moon Pearl yet, so we can't do Spike Cave just yet.
Chat saves me again. Thank you, chat.
I completely forgot about that. But I mean, we have it available to us. It's not like they can't do it. They would probably just do it on their next return trip.
Yeah, when you have the mitts and the hammer and you're up here routing in Dark World, you're at Death Mountain, it's easy just to assume that you have the Moon Pearl by now.
Yeah, it's kind of strange not to.
Well, I think what's confusing me at least is the fact that we've seen it, which, like, when you see it and don't pick it up, like, you know, that's so unusual. Usually, once you've seen it, you have it.
But in terms of quality of life, very nice to have the hookshot for this big key chest skip. Although, honestly, I think falling down, I'm not sure if that's actually faster than to just go up the stairs to get that chest when you can just walk across the switch later.
Falling down is slightly faster if the blue blocks are down. Coming down from above might be a little bit faster if they're up. Either way, using the hookshot for the general navigation on these pots makes getting around Hera a bit more convenient.
That's true. That's something you'll see from a lot of higher level players of Randomizer. They'll use their hookshot before they have boots to get a ton of space covered fast. Very handy strat to use for general movement tech in this game.
Siempe left the orange blocks down, which gave him access to picking up some hearts there before heading up to Moldorm. Looks like we're going to see hammer starts on Moldorm Normally you need a whole mess of fighter sword swings, but only 3 hammer hits, and with the hammer hits let you skip the final phase of the Motoron fight where he moves wicked fast.
Yep, and that's only on the 6th hit of the fighter sword, but we're just going to skip right over that by doing basically twice as much as that with each hammer hit. So this is a very straightforward fight with hammer. It's just a lot harder to hit the hitbox. It's very tight, but Siempe having no problems. P-Train taking the fall.
Yeah, it's a little bit more dangerous than the sword, because the sword makes it a little bit easier to stay on the platform when you're getting knocked around. Simply knocks it off in 1 cycle. P-Train heading up for his 2nd attempt.
Definitely agree with going hammer, though. I mean, that's basically tempered sword damage. So Moldorm, well, he's going to do the fighter sword, just to be safe, because you can block yourself from the ledge there, and that's definitely the safest way to deal with Moldorm. The last hit's going to be a little harder to get, though.
I don't blame him. He made the hammer attempt initially. Tried to go for speed. Got knocked off. At this point, you want to play it safe. You don't want to get knocked off over and over and over again, and then go and tilt.
Which happens to quite a lot of people. This is one of those fights that's a lot easier with boots.
Getting that last hit in is proving problematic with Moldorm just going crazy on that platform.
Also, we are going to get into Gina's cave check. I don't believe P-Train got this on the way through.
Now, both Siempe wisely choosing not to attempt to do the pearl-less spike cave check that I wanted him to try, heading straight over to desert, knocking out of Gina's and we're heading in. And unless we find the boots, in the desert, I don't think that the desert progression can be boots locked. Of course, we still have Zord, like everyone points out.
Yeah, so only a couple of unknowns really on the table here. I think that Moon Pearl is the biggest thing, though. Regardless of what happens here in Desert, we will find that.
Yes, and even if Desert is boots locked, that does not prevent them from picking up the Desert ledge item, which they simply need to walk through the exit to get to.
And of course, we could just find boots in here. Well, it is a crystal dungeon, and we do have a fire source, so presuming that we aren't stopped by any boots here, well, we should still be able to clear it either way, so we can definitely finish up Lamolus regardless.
Yeah, as long as the big key's not on the torch.
Oh, good point.
So we got our first item. There's two items in Desert, and the first one was a full heart. Siempe is not even looking at the torch. He's just going straight for the Moon Pearl.
That's an interesting choice, because if you don't know whether it's boots locked, and that's useful information, you might choose to come here immediately after finding boots, for example.
Well, he knows that he can't progress in the dungeon, so he's going to have to come back. But yeah, at least having the knowledge there, and it's only a second to check the item. But,
that item there means it's boots locked. Okay, yeah, because of the small key. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Some runners will go to the back portion of Desert and steal a small key from under the pot in order to check the right side. That might get them the second item, but will prohibit them from. They'll still need to come back and complete the dungeon. I like to at least check the torch, see what's there.
Yeah, if you're already going to be there anyway. Well, it looks like Turtle Rock is going to be Ether today. Dark World check. We have a pendant at Palace of Darkness and a pendant at Thieves Town. Number 5 and 6 are at Skull Woods and Swamp Palace, respectively.
That's not the best pendant layout you like to see. Thieves Town being a pendant is one of those dungeons that you're almost always gonna have to go in and clear just because it's so easy and to get the progression. It's always nice when it's a crystal, but at least it's a green pendant, so there's that 5th item.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more appealing to go all the way to blind. I actually just watched a race yesterday where that ended up being a factor. I think P-Train's doing the Super Bunny cave as Super Bunny, trying to do the Super Bunny glitch, falling down the hole as a bunny to pick up items as Link. That's actually a really interesting use of application of minor glitches.
Absolutely, absolutely allowed. Something that we very rarely see, because it's it's a sequence break that can give you major progression, but isn't super likely to. We did get a look at Turtle Rock while we were up there, and that's the Ether Medallion.
Well, Super Bunny not so super in that cave, but with a little bit of money and a quiver upgrade, we're going to save and quit the heck out of there. I definitely like where Siempe's head is at, though, checking all of Village of Outcasts before diving into Thieves Town.
Absolutely. You pick up an item like boots before you go into Thieves Town, you're gonna save yourself some time.
Looks like he's going to take care of the dig game now, allowing him to, if he finds the mirror later, take care of Blacksmith and the purple chest very quickly. Smart decision here.
That's definitely a good choice, and you know, having the Titan's mitts, he can get down here quickly, and he can get back up without having to, you know, to do a save and quit. Very nice early routing options. P-Train heading in the desert, obviously going to get his Moon Pearl, but it'll be interesting to see whether he checks the torch on his way out.
Yeah, and based on what I'm now realizing that Chad had caught us up on, it's got to be either a small key or a big key. Oh, a dirty bottle from the digging game after about 25 to 30 digs.
Well, when you say it like that, I guess you're right that knowing the knowledge doesn't make a difference.
See, that's why I was so confused, because, you know, I was like, wait a second, wouldn't you want to know if it was like mirror or something? But no, it can't be anything but that. So, yeah, now I get it. Appreciate Chat for pointing that out to us.
Yeah, I'll admit those, you know, it's sometimes you have to sit down and think about things like that for a second, and when you're trying to pay attention to two races, it's easy to overlook, but your Chat's absolutely right.
Let alone being in the race itself. So props to these runners for putting on the show for us. There are a lot of things to keep track of, and not even everybody uses a tracker. I don't even. And if you like what you're seeing from them, give them a follow. They still have a lot of races left. Even the folks in this tournament who go 0-3 after this week will still be able to continue racing, and there's a lot of tournament left for the Swiss round. There's 7 rounds total.
Absolutely, and you know, just because you might be blocked from progressing to the bracket stage doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of fun. And these runners, you know, they're putting on a show for us. They're having fun. We're having fun. There's no reason to drop out of the race.
But we're going to be excited to see one of these two runners rise to 1 and 2 to join me next week, maybe. We're going to get a hype cave check here out of Siempe.
So we got so much hype out of Paradox. I'm not expecting too much from the traditional hype cave 1.0.
Yeah, anti-hype cave, we're getting a lot of big 20s here and red items.
Rupees, arrows, and the bad boomerang.
I would have been fine with the junk cave, but I think the red meringue ruined everything.
Absolutely. I would have given it a 2 out of 10, but the red meringue actually makes it a 1 out of 10, I think. I'm taking a point off for that.
With some lag frames.
Well, at least the frog got his world tour, and he's back in human form now. P-Train, with his Moon Pearl, back up to Death Mountain, is going to be able to pick up all 4 items in the Hookshot Cave. It's already completed Super Bunny Cave, of course, and now Chat is able to pick up the Spike Cave item, logically.
Yep, that is now available to us.
Not only logically, but you know, the rules of the game, and finds boots. That is an ironic chest to find boots, and that's the one out of these 4 chests that you can get with boots if you don't have hookshot. So to find boots in there is a little odd.
Yeah, that's it's one of the most unlikely places to find it, I would think.
It's a little disappointing to see him not head over and knock out the Spike Cave while he's up there already in the Dark World. But picking up the boots, you know, he knows that he can now fully complete Desert. He's checking King's Tomb and the other bonk locations. You know, sometimes you don't necessarily you know, change your routing to accommodate items you just pick up, and sometimes you pick up an item and it immediately changes where you want to go.
Well, he gets powder immediately in King's Tomb, so he's rewarded with some safety. It'd be interesting to see if he tries to full clear Desert after all this, because that does give us the rest of Desert. You know, I want to indulge somebody in chat, though, who is bringing up a very funny phrase that I've always wanted to use because I'm an F-Zero fan. You got boots power.
I love that.
F-Zero Switch win.
So powdering King's Tomb, like you said, you could an excellent safety item. There are so many of the later game dungeons that are just loaded with anti-fairies. The seed has been fairly generous with health, and of course the early blue mail gives them a lot of safeties. But powder's one of my favorite items. P-Train is also, of course, being able to route in the Mad Batter in his routing of the blacksmith's area. Without mirror, he's going to have to do that when he's in the light world. Maybe when he turns the frog in.
That would be the right time before having the mirror. I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's something that I would have expected to have seen prior to taking the Dark World portal, not having mirror. But if he's planning on taking the frog to the world tour and turning him in, then that becomes the more efficient route.
Well, the good news for Siempe is they will find those boots, so if there's anything else where we really want or need to have those boots, or any time save for the rest of the seed, there's not really much separation between the two of them finding them.
Yeah, it's a little interesting to see the runners. They're both showing a preference for doing overworld checks over the dungeon dives.
Yeah, and we're only missing a couple of key components to be able to clear most dungeons, so I agree with it, although it's not something that every runner would do here. A lot of folks would have jumped into Thieves Town already. We're finding out, though, in terms of time save, it's pretty smart to not jump in there right away. These boots are going to be very handy for the rest of the seed.
Yeah, absolutely. The things you learn in hindsight.
Yeah, they're definitely not made for walking. Interestingly enough, Siempe actually picked up the skull pod and was trying to bonk across the first one to get back over there, but he'll finish up his checks. P-Train, in the meantime, finishing up Village of Outcasts. I'm curious to see if we're going to, because we already did the blacksmith, right, on his screen?
Siempe did the blacksmith. This is P-Train's first visit to this area, I believe.
So it'll be interesting to see how, or when he chooses to pick up the blacksmith and when he chooses to go into Thieves Town.
Well, it looks like he's finally making the dungeon dive. Everything's been overworld up to this point, so we're getting our green pendant dungeon knocked out of the way. With the hammer, they're able to fully clear this dungeon, and Fighter Sword is plenty sufficient for blind.
Yeah, you don't have any real advantage for a sword upgrade for blind, the only exception being that you have a longer sword hitbox with sword upgrades, so that's the only reason we would want a sword upgrade for this dungeon. Besides maybe the enemies are a little easier to kill with better swords, but you can avoid most of them.
That's true, and it is nice to have the powder in this dungeon, because there's quite a few locations where there's bunny beams under pots that can be turned into anti-fairies. So, having that safety this early in the game makes this relatively easy dungeon even easier.
And it's also a very common place for people who are doing, say, the vanilla NMG speedrun to have just finally picked up their powder. One of the two most common places for people to pick it up. So this is a pretty familiar territory for, I imagine, P-Train here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really there isn't much divergence in randomizer routing versus NMG routing for this dungeon, so it's nice that you can just let the muscle memory kick in for the most part.
Unfortunately, the game does still lag a lot in that main room, though. That super tile lagging quite a lot more than most others. But in the meantime, Siempe is heading towards the blacksmith area. It looks like we're going to get that magic bat check.
It's one of those checks that I personally like to see get out of the way early. It can bite you so badly, and it's so easy to get with the boots and the flute.
I'm right there with you. I've been burned pretty badly by it, but I always want to try to do like a fake powder here. It's a sequence break that's very rarely used, but we're going to find out right now, though, that the magic bat has been hoarding today just a little bit of love.
A lot of love. 4 little bits of love.
Well, he has a big heart to hold on to it for that long in such a cold, dank place. And Siempe, though, has some decisions to make.
Well, completing out his first full row of hearts gives him a very healthy amount of health at this point. That's redundant. Sorry.
Well, I am chair of the Department of Redundancy Department, so I greatly appreciate and endorse that message.
This is interesting. We're seeing Siempe pick up the shovel now that he has the boots, something that I had completely forgotten about. But You know, he did the magic bat. I guess he's in fetch quest mode at this point. It's good that he's remembered that it's there.
Yeah, it's some really interesting routing too, because this allows him to take advantage of being in the light world during this sequence. Kind of a route you don't see too often, but it makes sense in this particular scenario.
Shovel is an easy enough location to. Oh, shovel dash! I love to see that. Thank you, Siempe.
Siempe knows what's up, and he's gonna get rewarded immediately with silver arrows.
Wow, that is an excellent call on his part there. We get the swag and the silvers.
And part of the reason we call it swag, folks, besides looking amazing, shovel dashes don't actually dig up any items until the very last square that you stop at. But it'll dig the ground, so it's functionally useless to do. It just looks sweet.
So I like that Siempe is heading back into desert now. You know, being that this will give him a second crystal, and it's fully clearable. He's got you know, silvers now. He's well overgeared for the Lamola's fight, so it's going to be a really quick dungeon.
Yeah, all in all, if desert was something important here, like if there's a progression item locked behind this boots locked desert, this would be a great advantage for Siempe to have in routing. In the meantime, P-Train's going to fight blind, though.
Fighter Sword makes this a little bit more difficult, like you said, the limited reach, but he knocks out phase 1 flawlessly using NMG strats. Blind being the boss that, you know, if you practice it, you can get 100% reproducible patterns, and he's on a roll.
Yeah, the only divergence from the normal strat that we saw there was just because of the reach exactly of the sword. He was used to getting a hit there where he normally where he didn't in that situation, because he normally has Master Sword. But we're only getting rewarded with a lot of love there and a green pendant, so I don't believe Thieves Town has had anything of value.
No, and you know, other than blind dropping down to the bottom there, that was a textbook blind fight. So very well done for P-Train.
Yeah, I handled it very well.
Practice paid off.
Definitely not a fight you want to repeat either. Blind starts at the top of the room, and you can't get that the free first cycle that you would before. So very, very nice thing to find that you don't have to refight blind at all.
So P-Train, while he's in the area, looks like he's picking up some of the overworld checks that Siempe already did. Digging game, blacksmiths, those we know aren't going to lead to anything. Hopefully he makes the same decision to come back and get that shovel, because silvers is, you know, the thing that he wants to find the most. So we know where it is. And meanwhile, of course, we get to see what the last item in desert is.
And it sure won't take us long to get there. We just have one room to open up, and potentially a one-cycle Lamolus if we have some good silver arrows. But they're actually pretty hard to hit, so I would not be at all surprised if anybody missed arrows on this boss. There's a reason NMG runners take more than the required 12 to fight this boss. They'll bring as many as they can.
Yeah, fortunately though, you know, if you practice this in NMG, there is a position you can stand in that will let you get at least the initial cycle hit consistently, and only one silver required to do the kill to make it go pretty fast. So we're seeing looks like 3 cycles or 4 cycles. Still not.
That short hop was kind of annoying. Not a problem, though. Very easy wrap up for the fight. Probably a lot faster than it would have been with any other weapon.
P-Train picking up his what's the place? The Haunted Grove item there. Hopefully he comes back there later with the shovel, because we know that's where the light world version of that area is where the value is. But he's following the same route that Siempe did, taking the frog to Hype Cave and then back to Light World. Siempe not finding his second item on Lamola's is going to check the right side of desert over here. Definitely doesn't want to leave without that, and with boots, it's a quick check.
Yeah, the only thing that can make it any faster is having a mirror, but there are exits and 3 different exits you can leave this front half of the dungeon from, so we're not going to lose really much of any time from doing this.
Yeah, this dungeon is very clear that it wants you to be somewhere other than here. Just exits everywhere. Just a map in the first chest, unfortunately. You have to do the Wrecking Ball room.
Well, bad cannonball RNG, but great reflexes is going to give us another fetch quest.
Well, with all the value that he got from his last fetch quest and his ability to flute directly to the witch, he's going to turn that in immediately.
I'm of the same belief as you are, but remains to be seen. Sometimes runners do things that we want to expect to see, but don't always. But switching to flute here, pretty likely. I would agree, though. This is the right play to make.
So so just taking a look here, trying to figure out where they might go next. We don't know what the Misery Mire area has this. We haven't seen that yet. They're not able to get into Turtle Rock, and only P-Train actually knows what the medallion is. Ice and Swamp are both, of course, logically flipper locked. So I think probably Thieves Town for Siempe maybe, and potentially finishing Desert and then Pod for P-Train. What are your thoughts?
Those decisions make a lot of sense to me, and it seems like Siempe is trying to get ready for clearing a lot of dungeons. Taking the time to empty out his green potion, actually using the lamp to do so, which is kind of funny to watch. Very interesting animation when you're spamming it. We're gonna get a catfish check out of P-Train with that blacksmith. So we've taken the blacksmith to the holy fish, and we'll see if having two people to pray to, it's going to result in a better item.
Well, unfortunately, no love from this fish. And we haven't seen Zora yet, so maybe one of the fish will give us something valuable.
Well, I think the catfish looked at the blacksmith and said, "Hey, when you go back to the light world, you're only going to charge this sucker $10 for your item, right? Let me at least double your salary." And we just walked away from it. Apparently, it wasn't a good enough offer.
Yeah, I've always found that to be a little bit insulting. You go all the way up there, the guy gives you free money, and then you just walk away from it. It's just, I don't know.
And the time save's not that big, but hey, it's randomizer. People are racing, of course. So everybody's going to make a different decision in that position. I personally would also pick up the 20. I mean, it just feels right.
I would leave it, but it's more out of spite than time savings, to be honest.
Yeah, you did actually spend a lot of time to get to the catfish.
So the catfish was something that Siempe decided not to route in because it is so out of the way. Fortunately for him, not missing out on anything. Siempe taking one of the options that we didn't mention. I'll look at the first couple items in Skull Woods. Can't complete the dungeon without the fire rod, but frequently there are some useful items in these early chests. It's one of those rare treasure troves that have persisted throughout the versions of Randomizer.
That's very true. There are 2 total items you can get in Skull Woods, but only 2 of the total item checks are actually at the boss and the chest right before the boss, respectively. So it makes a lot of sense to dive into the front half, which you can clear very quickly. Interestingly enough, it looks like we had cash smiths, not blacksmiths.
So we get the big key and 2 small keys so far in Skull Woods. So we just have the big chest and 1 more small chest that's accessible without the fire rod. We could see no items.
We'll also get a bomb jump here out of Siempe, maybe forgetting that he has the boots to dash against the wall, but he almost gets the 2 pixel window to do the regular bomb jump.
Absolutely. You have to be very careful lining that up. There's only 2 pixels from the edge you can be when you place it. If you use the boots and bonk off the wall, that gives you a 6 pixel margin of error. So it's a lot easier, and that's the strategy we typically see in NMG. Simply using the vanilla method of accessing that chest, falling down the front there. Meanwhile, P-Train did pick up his shovel, so hopefully it won't be too long before he turns it in.
Yeah, he's going to be very happy to find the results of that. Maybe even feeling a little behind, having had access to it for a little while, although, our racers haven't really cleared that many dungeons, so shouldn't be a big deal either way.
And just the map in this big chest, so only 1 more small chest before Siempe is going to have to abandon the Skullwoods area.
Yep, it's going to be in the vanilla big key location, relatively low on health as well. We have Canis Samaria, though, so this is a much easier check to make. Speaking of checks, P-Train will check the Peg Cave, which I don't know if we actually saw elsewhere.
This will be our first use of the Canis Samaria, and this is one of the best places to use it. Pushing the statue and avoiding those Gyptos is quite difficult.
Peg Cave had our Turtle Rock access with Ether. Whoa.
Not necessarily, well, I was sorry. I was thinking TR was a pendant for a second. Absolutely something you want to find.
Yeah, so the nice thing about that, though, for Siempe is it's really not that far out of the way. I don't believe we've done the purple chest yet, so there's a decent chance that Siempe would go there anyway.
So P-Train walking down the chest instead of fluting down to the dam, a little bit less frequently seen, but still an efficient way to route that in.
Yeah, this is your public PSA, folks. You can flute with followers.
So not much from the Skullwoods area, but like I said, good to get that out of the way. Curious on where Siempe will be heading now.
If things work out well, hopefully that Peg Cave and Purple Chest. I mean, those are pretty logical next places to go. And I mean, we can't do Swamp Palace without that mirror. We can't do Skull Woods without the Fire Rod. Ice Palace, we don't have Bombos or Fire Rod. And Misery Mire is no medallion yet, so I think he has to go to Thieves Town and then Purple Chest.
Yeah, Thieves Town logically makes sense. 5 potential items. You know, we've seen 4 of those and know that they haven't yielded any value. You know, of course, we're working off the assumption that the pendant itself won't be needed for the pedestal. But you know, simply, you know, without that knowledge, knowing that there's 5 items here and it's a quick dungeon makes a lot of sense to route in. P-Train finishing up Desert, not going to find any significant things here other than the crystal.
You know, it's pretty interesting that nobody's checked the pedestal, and you know, we've had Book for quite a long time. I'm kind of curious as to see what we're going to eventually find with that pedestal.
Absolutely. Typically, I find you get pedestal check either very, very early if you find the book, which we didn't get it quite early enough, or players will like to route it in when they defeat Mothula if they have the mirror. If they don't, then it's typically not seen unless they're really desperate and searching for items at the end of the game.
And looking at what we would need to clear our remaining pendant, which is Palace of Darkness, I believe we have everything that we would need to do so.
We do. I believe that that all of them so the Misery Mire medallion could be on pedestal. Flippers could be on pedestal. Mirror, which they'll need for Swamp Palace.
I'm sorry, this is really funny to me. A mirror on pedestal.
Fire Rod, yeah, Fire Rod can be there.
Ooh, Siempe got the God Pixel in Thieves Town. You have to get good RNG to get through that without even getting stopped. That was nice.
Most valuable item, the blue boomerang, can be there.
Ooh, the boomerang could be there. Okay, so that pedestal is obviously required if that's the case. We gotta get rid of, or we at least want to have the boomerang over this red meringue. All jokes aside, though, folks, no, you would not have to go get a boomerang if it was on the pedestal. Everything that my co-commentator Tiru has mentioned are the items that you would actually need if they were there.
Yeah, the pendant placement is actually turning out to work in the runner's favor. You know, Eastern was the King of Samaria. That was, you know, early progression, and you know that was a valuable dip. Thieves Town, you know, it didn't have progression, but both of our runners are doing it, so it's not a net time loss for either of them. Palace of Darkness being our last pendant at this point, it's an item-rich location, which, you know, they're probably inclined to check simply for the items. So finishing up Helmasaur at that point, you know, even if it's just for the pendant, it's going to make a lot of sense.
And I'm kind of wondering where Zora is in all this, because I got to think if you had the mirror, you would just do Catfish and Zora right before going into Palace of Darkness. But that is the one remaining place besides Pod that I can think of, at least, that has an item we haven't checked yet.
Yeah, we know the mirror is going to be required because we needed to complete Swamp Palace. Unfortunately, not having the mirror earlier is making some of their routing a little bit inconvenient. Like you mentioned out, they're not able to route Zora in with Catfish. They've also both done both the northern and southern Dark World locations, so if they find the mirror now, they're going to have to decide whether they want to go to do Graveyard Ledge checks or the South of Grove checks just for one item.
This is a tough position to be in. I really don't know what I would do in this position, but it looks like P-Train's going to check the Mire area, and we'll also figure out what we need for entry into Misery Mire, which could actually be Ether.
Absolutely. We know he can definitely pick up 2 items from the Mire shed, and of course the knowledge, we find that Quake is the required medallion for Mire.
Well, a little bit of ire here in Misery Mire if we don't find that Quake medallion pretty quick.
Love it.
Cape not exactly that welcome either.
No, Cape only unlocking Bumper Cave at this point, which is an item that, you know, they already checked. I think it was just rupees up there.
Also, yo, shoutouts to Siempe there doing some Canis Samario strats against Blind. I'm very much a fan of that.
Gotta be careful with that. You can soft lock that pendant dropping if you use the Canis Samario when you're picking up the item.
That happened just
the
recently,
other night. It happened in a race I was commentating 2 days ago.
That must have been awkward to watch.
I first time I had seen it, I wasn't sure if it was even recoverable from, but the runner decided to go back there and pick up the crystal. It worked out well.
Well, that's good knowledge to have. I didn't realize you could recover from that. But good news for Siempe here, going to pick up that Ether that we need. And it looks like P-Train is making that play for Eastern, or for Palace of Darkness. I'm wondering, we don't have the mirror, so we can't check the green pendant item with Sahazrla. That's kind of a crummy thing about this.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate that, you know, he's gonna have to route that in separately. With the boots and the ability to, you know, either get there quickly from 5 or 4 flute locations, it's not that far out of the way, and there's no reason that he can't find the mirror in the Palace of Darkness and get it on the way out.
That would be the best case scenario.
Yeah, there's enough items in Palace of Darkness at this point to make it an excellent decision to go here.
So I just want to kind of, you know, point it out here. We're an hour and a minute and a half into the seed, and we have almost identical checks for our runners here.
This seed just really hasn't given you too many options for diversions. I mean, obviously, you know, a player could have gone the pod, you know, very early rather than Thieves Town, but there hasn't been any obvious diversions like a crystal opening up. Right? If you're just choosing between 2 pendant dungeons, you know, you're gonna go with whatever is quicker.
Absolutely. So these are some of the quick calculations or the quick calculus that our runners will do to try and figure out, hey, what actually does make sense here? Of course, as we know here from the commentary couch and of course in the audience, it's a bit of a crapshoot either way. You never really know until you find them. Speaking of green pendants, though, I believe Siempe is going to turn this one in.
Yeah, it does look that way, and you know, time-wise, turning it in before or after pod really isn't that much of a difference unless this is a progression, and it's not just a piece of heart.
Well, he loves that we brought it back to him, but yeah, that is a bit of a time sink.
So P-Train has just found keys and a compass so far in potted, I believe. There's a lot of small keys in this dungeon, so you typically do pick up a lot of junk before you find the progression items. And Siempe, you know, doing Mire as well, so finds out that he needs Quake.
Well, so I suppose if we're looking at you know, how much time has been spent with routing and really where these runners are separate, since they have pretty much done almost all of the exact same checks, I would say that if anybody was quote unquote ahead, I suppose it'd be P-Train, having gone all the way into Palace of Darkness at this point.
Yes, I think I have to agree with you there. Simply due to the fact that they've done essentially all the same content. P-Train hasn't done the shovel check and doesn't have the silver arrows, which, you know, you could say if he never goes and gets those, could be you know, a net time loss. But we're still at the point where we're talking you know, a minute difference.
Now, they have done virtually the same things, which is very rare an hour into a seed that we can say, hey, qualitatively, like, how far apart are these folks? You almost never have that kind of circumstance. So kind of interesting to see what different choices they've made when they have some limited options to work with. Palace of Darkness is a very sensible play as far as randomizer fans go. We know that there's a lot of items here. Does not mean that it's going to pay off.
All right. Well, we're seeing Siempe do his spike cave check. He did not come back up here once he got his Moon Pearl to do the Dark World area checks. Well, actually, no. He did Hookshot Cave because he has his boots. So I guess he did everything but the spike cave. And we find Quake in Pod. So Pod was absolutely required.
Yeah, that's a pretty big payoff. We can now get into Misery Mire, and I have to imagine whatever we need next is probably there. Or potentially maybe that pedestal's next. Who knows?
Well, we just found the blue boomerang in Spike Cave, so there's really no value in pet at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you raise a good point. I mean, it was absolutely worth it to dive all the way through that Spike Cave. You got the best lagless boomerang.
In all seriousness, there are a few neat tricks you can do with the blue boomerang that in Ganon's Tower that gives you some nice swag to watch. But beyond
we might be joking about it, but that's a preference on our end.
So Siempe doing the fake flipper here. I guess wants to knock out these Zora items. We're gonna see the Halia Island item, which I don't think we saw on either side. Get Hobo, and then with the Moon Pearl, he'll be able to get 3 of the 4 items up in Zora's domain. Everything but the ledge item.
That raises an interesting possibility. If flippers were on pedestal and P-Train never did a fake flipper, that would be a huge advantage for Siempe if flippers were, really necessary earlier on.
Well, flippers are absolutely going to be required for both players in order to complete Swamp Palace. But if we find some other items up here, like the Fire Rod, for example, that might let him find something else a little easier.
Yeah, and the convenience of the routing. I think that'd be the big thing. Here we have a shovel check for P-Train, though, going to find those silvers. I guess we didn't see a flute for Siempe, so I think you're right about checking Zora at this point.
Yeah, he has the boots, so if there is a really valuable item on the ledge, he actually can do a little bit of backtracking and buffer a fake flipper to do a water walk and pick up that ledge item. Though if it's that valuable, you have to expect that the flippers are going to be right around the corner.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So we're going to get an attempt at a water walk. He swam a little bit to the right there, actually, to prevent getting sniped by that Zora. That's a good heads-up play.
Yeah, doing the fake flippers, taking a single hit will instantly kill you, and a fairy will not help you.
I didn't catch the left chest, but that water walk didn't look too bountiful.
Just bombs and a big 20, and we're seeing the same thing from P-Train. Yet again, both players are mentally in sync here. P-Train, I guess, deciding that he got everything he wanted out of Pod, and is not completing that dungeon.
That could potentially be an issue if that pedestal ends up being necessary, because, and one thing I'm seeing in other races is, you should probably just finish your plays. Sometimes, you end up sinking a lot of time to clear stuff out, but I don't know. It's kind of tough to gamble on that.
Yeah, well, Quake and Ether, Quake and Ether, gives them the ability to complete Mire and do some of Turtle Rock anyway. They'll be Fire Rod locked fairly early. Maybe they're expecting to get the progression elsewhere.
It's the tough thing about being in our shoes where we're just kind of commentating and calling the race, because, there are things that we would personally individually do and things that pay off or don't. And sometimes they're not the same thing. So, we oftentimes have to be a little bit wrong here on the commentator couch, myself mostly included. You've been pretty good so far, Tiru, but I tend to make a lot of guesses.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at things from the player's point of view, and not say, this is what I would personally do most of the time.
P-Train, by the way, barely dodging a Zora shot there.
Very, very, very close. Siempe going to Pod, but fighting off those murder-dactyls with the fighter sword, that's never fun.
Yeah, they hit really hard, and we only have blue mail. We don't have red mail to kind of insulate that. While we do have a fair amount of health, there's still a lot of risk in this seed.
there's no amount of mail that makes the Murderodactyl safe. They are a spawn of pure evil. So Siempe heading in the pod, P-Train finishing up Zora. Like I said, each of them continue to be very close on each other's heels, completing the items that the other one has done moments before. I didn't get a chance to see what was on the Zora's ledge on Siempe's side, and P-Train didn't even look at it.
Well, so back to your thought from before about Misery Mire, it's looking very appealing right now. There are only 2 items we can get in Misery Mire, and it does take some time to check them, but I can hardly see where else we're going to find something. It's starting to look a lot like a mirror in Mire.
Yeah, the biggest issue with going into Mire, with what they had up until recently was the fact that defeating the boss with the fighter sword is difficult, and the hammer is very difficult. But now that they both have silvers, they'll be able to breeze through the dungeon.
Yeah, fun reference point. We usually have tempered if we're doing the NMG speedrun, and that's enough to get a 0 cycle on the Vitreous fight, but it's a lot harder to do that with fighters, so those silvers are going to come in really handy.
P-Train is turning in his green pendant. Going to get a little bit of disappointment along with that piece of love. So I'm really interested to see if Siempe decides to do the pod full clear here after it picks up Quake. That'll be our first real divergence that it takes one runner significant time to repeat.
And from what I'm seeing in chat, it looks pretty likely that that'll be the case based on previous races that Siempe has done. So we'll probably see some kind of pedestal check, I would think, if you have all 3 pendants, right?
I would expect to see the blind pull. At that point, you just can't miss out on the hype of doing the blind pull by reading the text.
I salute that.
A lot of runners, a lot of runners do live by the always be clearing dungeons, and if you enter a dungeon, do a full clear if you can philosophy. Sometimes you'll get burnt, but anytime that you can avoid having to backtrack to a dungeon is a massive time savings.
Yeah, and A Link to the Past, whether it's Randomizer or NG, it's usually the worst thing that can happen to you is a death, and the second worst thing that can happen to you is going through a dungeon twice. Both pretty comparable, really. Well, we know these remaining pod items aren't that great. We know that Skull Woods isn't going to have anything important for us until we have that Fire Rod, because I think we only found 1 item out of here.
Yeah, Siempe may have also decided, having gone through that dark maze without mirror, your only option is to walk all the way back out or do a death warp, and with blue mail and as many hearts as they have at this point, that's not exactly fast either option. So that could have been part of the thinking there.
That's a really good point. It's not as easy to get out, or at least, to continue going in other directions from there. So a save and quit, might not be the right route for our runners here. But interesting thing too, I want to point this out. Saving and quitting in the Dark World would normally take you back to the Pyramid if you have the mirror. Our runners do not have mirror, so they get to choose where in the Light World they want to respawn. Absolutely, and
that's actually, I believe that's only the case if you've killed Aghanim. If you haven't killed Aghanim, then you do not go to the Pyramid.
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's completely right.
That's if that would always take you to the Pyramid, that would be a pretty neat shortcut. But unfortunately, killing Aghanim, you're going to start at the Pyramid, so you're going to see what's there.
And of course, our runners are definitely not going to do that today.
All right, Siempe, it looks like he's walking back out, so we are probably going to see a full clear on this dungeon, which, like I said, I do like to see that. There have been many times where I've picked up the mirror and I've cleared Aghanim and I've completely forgotten about that, and you find yourself on the pyramid and you're like, oh man, I got a mirror and save a quit again.
Right. It's a bit of a time loss anytime you forget that, and picking up those items, that's the weird thing too about randomizers. Sometimes you will pick up items that change how the game works on a fundamental level like that. So those are small things that people can remember from that. But having checked, I think that was Pyramid for P-Train there.
Yeah, he checked his bumper cable location. Just found that it was a green crystal. Siempe did the nice bonk back on the steps there to complete these items. Great way to get back up here without having to fight all those enemies or take another death warp.
Yep, so he has pretty much all the keys he can get from this dungeon, I believe, so there should be at least one item between this chest or the next one.
Yeah, he'll have, I was going to say he would have one extra key. It's kind of
key logic in this dungeon is annoying. Actually, that's a really interesting thing too, folks. If you haven't, taken the time to look into the logic behind keys in Palace of Darkness, that's a really important one to learn if you're going to learn any key logics. You can skip quite a few chests if you make some smart decisions with it.
Did Siempe go right side directly and never open the first door? Because I think he should only have one key at this point.
That's correct. He's been to the right side. Getting a little confused at this point.
Well, yeah, you should only have one key unless he never went to the front door, which is possible.
Actually, I think that's the case because he can't save and quit or mirror in this situation. Well, he can save and quit, but he didn't choose to. So yeah, he wouldn't have gone down the middle door in the first room.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, he gets to steal a key for the back half and take it to Helmasaur King, who will not be happy about that. He's going to spit some fireballs at you for it. But we're going to get a Misery Mire check for P-Train here. P-Train wisely knowing that Quake will do nothing to this Murderdactyl. So trying to send him away for a little bit. We're going to get no bird toss today.
Unfortunately, that Murderdactyl is going to be doing some damage during this animation. Normally, you want to enter this dungeon with sword beams to take care of this next room, but with the fighter sword, no sword beams are available, so taking those 2 hits isn't really going to make a difference for him.
Yep, the next best weapon you would use here is a fire rod. We don't have that either. Hookshot's good enough for the little ropa monsters, though. We're going to take care of those with that, and with the whiz robes, about 3 cycles. That's not a bad room.
No, if they didn't have silvers, this would be a very difficult dungeon. But with what they have, it's not really an issue.
It's like we're having a turtle party, though.
Yeah, if they had to do bomb strats on Vitreous or hammer strats, that fight can become a nightmare very fast.
I don't think I've ever seen bomb strats on Vitreous, and now I'm very curious.
Oh yeah, they work. I've done it.
I don't envy you for that. Well, we will get a Helmasaur King, and this just takes 17 smacks in the face with that hammer, and I have to imagine you're going to use a silver arrow on the last hit.
Yeah, I think they're going to opt for the 1 silver arrow versus the 8 fighter sword spins. Definitely.
Now, speaking of that, it would be spins, too, not even just the regular slashes. It would take like 16 slashes otherwise. I don't even know if it can damage him with slashes. I never really tried.
I don't know either. That's why I played it safe and went with spins.
But we're going to play it even safer on Siempe's screen, just shooting a single silver arrow into that green jewel, and Helmasaur King is down, giving us a big 20 and the blue pendant. And
we got a few rage slashes over there from Siempe. Made the gamble to full clear the dungeon, and would have paid off significantly for him if there was progression there. Unless we find something on the pedestal, that's unfortunately going to ultimately turn out to be a time waste.
No, I saw a big 20 on P-Train's screen. That is one of the 2 items in Mire. Pedestal's looking a little more likely than it did before.
Yeah, P-Train already picked up the big key, so at this point it's just he's just trying to find that second item. Some runners, once they get the big key, may go directly to the boss, and in case the boss has one of the items. But then you have to backtrack if he doesn't. So it's kind of a 50-50 there.
Yeah, all valid decisions. It just kind of comes down to runner preference, really. One of those 2 options is going to be right. You never really know.
Absolutely. As commentators, I think we tend to try to lay out what the options are, as a point of reference. But in almost all of these cases, the runner can choose amongst them, and most of them are equally good.
Well, both of our runners have entered Misery Mire. Not going to find a lot here, it doesn't look like, but there's still a chance here. P-Train's going to be the first one to show us what the vanilla big key chest has.
Siempe is able to full clear the dungeon without any more progression, so I think wants to put off that pedestal pull a little bit longer, try to build up some more personal hope.
Well, not only that, but P-Train just found the fire rod.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent second item to find.
Yeah, so Fire Rod does a lot for us. We can now finish up Mothula, which has an item back there. That would be if we had the mirror, say, for example, in Mothula. That would be a fantastic way to check the pedestal. But that's not going to be convenient routing until then. I'm not sure where else we can find mirror. We have both items in this dungeon, so... Wow, this is an interesting predicament for the runners to make some choices.
We've seen both Siempe and P-Train make use of their knowledge of the dungeon and the location of the bunny beams. Both of them powdered bunny beams while they were still under their pots, load off their health. Knowing where all those things are, is invaluable game knowledge.
Yeah, for folks who aren't as familiar, well, that is a Godmire, by the way. That's big key in the first chest. But for those of you who aren't familiar about using the powder, you can use powder to turn anti-fairies. You see the red things on P-Train's screen here, or bunny beams, which are those yellow beams that turn you into a bunny. You can powder both of those to get a fairy. But the bunny beams, you have to powder them before they start moving. You can also powder them before you've even picked up the pot they're hiding under.
Absolutely, and you can powder them out in the open as long as like you said, Yuta, they haven't started moving. But pots are always great because they have nowhere to go.
Yep, very convenient spots, and there's a lot of places to heal with powder in this dungeon. Even one right before Vitreous himself, which is super convenient. But with Silver Arrows, this should be a pretty straightforward fight for P-Train as long as we stay out of the lightning.
The biggest risk here for Siempe is deciding not to find that second Misery Mire item and just say one's enough, knowing that it's the Fire Rod.
And of course, it has to be behind the Vanilla Big Key location, the slowest thing to check here.
Well, that's usually how Mire progression works.
Well, Chad is pointing out that Turtle Rock is definitely on the table, so we may or may not end up going to Mothula right away.
Mothula might be more appealing. Turtle Rock, Turtle Rock essentially, for all practical purposes, includes the Light World location Mimic Cave, which is only accessible via mirror. So putting that off a little bit until you have the mirror, can make sense to avoid having to do that potential double dip. As long as there are other crystal dungeons that you can full clear, they may be a little bit more appealing.
And speaking of that, we do have Ice Palace still. Once we find those flippers, we can get there, but you can fake flipper to it. So that's a sequence break that if you, say, for example, had the Fire Rod like we just did, it might actually make sense to do, but we can't confirm that we can go mode it until we get that mirror.
Absolutely. Both the Fire Rod and the Bombos medallion give you logical access to Ice Palace. It is one of those dungeons that a lot of players do try to save for last to go mode. While we know that they can't possibly find the flippers in Ice Palace, that could have one of the other progression items. Which really all they need at this point: mirror and another sword.
And just to update folks who didn't see us enter Skullwoods before, we only have one item remaining here in Skullwoods, and it is either on Mothula or the chest just before.
Well, I'd like to see P-Train coming back here. Knowing he can complete it, pick up that crystal, it'll be a really quick check, and we'll get that second item.
Now, fate could be cruel, and they could give him a mirror here, and he could find out that the pedestal is required. That would be probably the worst-case scenario for P-Train.
No, Siempe, don't slash the Fire Rod chest. That was a nice item to find.
Yeah, that's what you wanted. Fire Rod's a great find at any point, though, particularly when you have half magic, so we're going to get a heal, take on Vitreous. In the meantime, P-Train is putting that Fire Rod to judicious use, heading back to Mothula, and hopefully going to light him on fire.
Absolutely. You have to be a little bit conservative with your magic there. If you're doing normal magic, NMG strats, you try to avoid get those, but with half magic and 16 shots, you can just burn them down.
Something else of note here. We've had Spider Sword for almost an hour and a half. We do need Master Sword at least to finish the game.
Well, it takes 8 fire rod shots to kill Mothula, or 4 hammer rod not hammer rod shots, hammer shots. He's got about 14 fire rod shots with the magic he's got. So it's, it's a little bit dangerous to use the hammer. The hitbox is difficult, but he pulls it off.
Wow.
Very well executed.
Maybe he was taking a hint from the uncle about an hour 24 minutes ago when he said that he's going to check out the moth tutorial, and we found that hammer there.
Absolutely. Well, he finds the second item, so he's not going to have to check the other chest in the back half of Skullwoods here. Just a small harp piece, though. But he gets the crystal, and he definitely needs that crystal.
Well, no fun today when it comes to the mirror, but it does have choices to make. Mountain is either a flute or a turtle rock. We're going to find that out pretty quick. It's looking a lot like Trinex.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, yep, we're going to get some silver arrow strats on Vidi. Should be a 1 cycle.
The other 2 crystals are, logically locked behind the flippers. So, like I said, this does make sense. You could, if you fake flip or Ice Palace, you do it knowing it's a gamble.
Yeah, and it's a heck of a gamble too, because it does take some time to clear everything out. And if we do find, say, flippers and mirror up here in Turtle Rock, you would just go mode ice.
And swamp, that's the dream scenario.
And with the item density here in Turtle Rock, I can't think of a better play here.
Yeah, all we're looking for at this point is the flippers, at least 1 more sword, and the mirror. And then our players will be in go mode.
After quite a long amount of time, goodness gracious, we're almost an hour and a half into this seed. I believe Helmasaur in chat asking, Stunman in chat asking about Helmasaur. I think it was either a big 20 or a piece of heart. It wasn't valuable.
I believe it was a piece of heart. Chat says Blue Ruby. I don't know.
Either way, we were not too happy about it.
If it wasn't a flippers, mirror, or sword, then I'm not going to commit it to long-term memory.
And you almost kind of have to keep your sanity here in Randomizer. Randomizer, you basically focus on the big things and then try to do what you can with them, because you're going to find a lot of big 20s. There's like 18 of them in the game. I feel like it's a missed opportunity to not put 2 more instances of it, though.
B-Train finding the 10 bomb item in the first Turtle Rock chest. That's interesting for 2 reasons. First off, it's a new item that was added to version 29 specifically. So if you pick it, if you do get bombs as your uncle weapon, it's a clear indicator that bombs is all you're going to get, and that's what you're going to need to use. But it also means that if they hadn't picked up the fire rod, they would not be able to get any further in this dungeon.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that items can be locked in or out of certain areas, and fire rod's a very interesting one here for Turtle Rock, because those torches, there's 2 small keys here. Like, you can't get those without them. We haven't talked about it yet, but the hookshot is a great way to get invincibility frames. While you're in the hookshot animation, you cannot be damaged, although you are vulnerable once it ends. P-Train taking good advantage of that to avoid rollers in that roller room.
Absolutely. Definitely take some practice, though, because if the hookshot hits the roller or a wall, that will end your invincibility frame window. So you have to definitely practice that. Don't try that at home.
Well, this pokey here would normally be an opportunity for a fairy drop in P-Train's screen, but we're just wanting that key so we can get to the chain chomp room and clear behind it. There is 1 chest here that could very likely have an item.
Wow, big key's an item. That counts, right?
It's always nice to find that pretty early in the dungeon. Interestingly enough, Siempe here opting to use mostly lamps and keeping his magic as high as possible walking into Mothula. I get the feeling he wants to start a fire.
Yeah, that's definitely an indication that he doesn't want to have to rely on the hammer hitbox to pull him out of a difficult fight. By conserving magic and by having half magic, he's going to be going in with all 16 fire rod shots available. That's double what he needs to kill him. and he still may have his green potion.
I believe he did. Yeah, so this is a pretty cozy fight, the spikes being the most frustrating part about it. P-Train's going to opt to pick up some fairies, actually, in the room before the Vanilla Big Key room, which is a pretty smart strategy. You have quite a lot of health, but you also don't have to worry about dying for the rest of the seat.
P-Train is picking up all the fairies in that room. I think he got 3 of them there. And our first use of the net. Yes.
Yeah, that is. We haven't seen it yet. Well, Siempe has to be very careful. At a heart and a half, with half a heart to work with, will take a death here in Mothula.
And that's unfortunate, but he does have a fairy. P-Train taking the alternate pipe back into Turtle Rock. You don't typically see that this particular route. Curious about it.
Yeah, it's technically the long way. It does lead back to the same place, so while it costs a couple of seconds, not a big deal. But yeah, absolutely, you very rarely see that. I do like that P-Train's using Fire Rod against these Pokies. That's one of the most frustrating enemies in the game to try and kill reliably, and you definitely are not going to have much luck using Fighter Sword doing that.
Absolutely. There is an advantage of taking that longer route, and the fact that there's a full magic pot. But when he was all topped off when he did it, though.
Well, P-Train here does not have the mirror, realizing that using his menu buffer instead to get to the Cane of Samaria, it'd be really good to find that pretty soon, but that 100 rupees is not what he's looking for.
Yeah, that reason right there, the inability to access Mimic Cave is why, potentially sequence breaking into ice or checking the other locations could have value, but I don't blame the runners for heading to Turtle Rock, because that is such a gamble. It's something that you really only do if you think that you need to take an extreme risk.
There's an interesting thing, though. If we do find, say, mirror on Laser Bridge, we could actually mirror out to that entrance and go directly there. That being, of course, if we think there's something there.
It's not a bad decision to make, as long as they do it before they take the Laser Bridge safety door. They absolutely can mirror back there. If I find the mirror on Laser Bridge, I think I would take that check.
It's a very rare opportunity to do something like that. So fans out there who love Zelda have not played this game would want to know the mirror, when you use it in the Dark World, will take you to the Light World, but when you're in a dungeon, it'll take you to the last entrance that you entered the dungeon from. So some dungeons like Turtle Rock and Desert Palace have multiple entrances. You can use that to make some very smart routing decisions.
Well, we're gonna find out here what is on Laser Bridge. P-Train has half magic, the Burna, and Cape, so he's got plenty of choices on how to get past these things. Of course, you can also just do the laser skip dash, which he's done for the first 2 chests.
Yeah, he did those very well. Only taking damage on the way back, but looks like Laser Bridge is a bust, although I think there is an item on Trinex. Mirror Trinex would be a pretty big troll.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're definitely not going to be able to take the exit at that point. I expect to see him fairy a few powder a few anti-fairies. Jesus, man, I'm off today. To top off his health.
Hey, no worse than me, absolutely. I definitely feel you there. But yeah, it's a smart time to take a heal. P-Train has a lot of fairies to work with, so he's probably not too worried about where he's at, but just to be safe, might as well.
This is a very difficult fight. With the Fighter Sword, you're essentially forced to swap back and forth between the rods and the hammer, to do any effective damage on Trinex. With all the mobility and the limited hammer hitbox, this is one of the harder fights that you really do need to practice. You can't wing this one.
And yeah, a great point about hammer being the most likely weapon here. Menuing is so much easier to do in this fight than it is to try to just do Fighter Sword. You would have to use an insane amount of magic to keep him stunned.
Yeah, the ice head you can burn down with magic, and if he gets a quick kill on the firehead, and he's doing very well initially, I wouldn't be surprised to see him just burn down the ice head with all the magic he's got.
Uh-oh, looks like the ice head will get some ice onto the floor.
Yeah, that makes using magic even more likely. It's so dangerous.
Yeah, the biggest part about the ice floor being an issue is that the third head in the center there will smack you pretty easily, and you don't have a lot of movement to get around it.
We see that he did make a few attempts at the hammer, and the head doesn't stay frozen long enough to navigate the ice and get any effective number of hammer hits in. So he's resorted to burning him down, which I think is the safe choice.
Yeah, and it was very smart to have those fairies. He still has a couple extra, I think, but so he will have a lot of safety for the remainder of this fight, which would normally be pretty annoying with the fighter sword. He can use hammer to finish this off, but it's actually a very small hitbox, so not the most difficult hammer hits to do. He does give you a little bit of the window, just very dangerous.
Yeah, hammer on this phase is a lot easier than the hammer on the heads. Because you have the horizontal hitbox, which is a little bigger, and he executes that very well. I think he was down to only one fairy, and he gets a sword. Oh, that's a great prize.
Well, Master Sword, an interesting thing to find. This does satisfy one of our go mode conditions, however, not the ones that we were looking for. Mirror. That's still at large, and can you think of any other locations that we haven't checked yet?
Well, for P-Train, he hasn't finished Pod, so there's an item on Pod, which could be, of course, flippers from Mirror for all we know. Both of those items can be on the pedestal. We haven't even seen what the item is there, let alone pulled it. Only Siempe can actually do that at this point. But looks like P-Train is going to be doing looked like he was going to fake flipper into ice, but now it looks like he's going to finish off Pod.
Well, from what we know, while we do have the Master Sword to check the tablets, Ether tablet was a quiver upgrade. Bombos cannot have that mirror, and we don't have that mirror yet, so I'm always trying to exclude everything else before I say it, but it really does look like a mirror pedestal here.
Bombos could have the flippers. No, of course you can't get to it without the mirror. Yeah, so yeah, you're right.
Well, so you're also right. I think Bombos could actually have the flippers we're looking for.
Bombos could have the flippers, but we would need the pedestal to have the mirror to unlock Bombos. So either way, I think pedestal is, if not absolutely required at this point, very probable. There might be other locations that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, everything else I can think of is mirror locked. We're looking at Graveyard Ledge, Cave 45. We've done all the fetch quests.
Yeah, and nobody in chat has jumped in here and said, Tiru, you are absolutely wrong yet. On the contrary, they're just saying that mirror looks probable. So
that's definitely a good reassurance. I myself would be looking for the same thing, like, hey, are you missing something obvious? And I haven't seen anything yet, so...
Yeah. They're usually pretty quick to point out when either of us makes a mistake, which is what we love to see. So that is not a complaint.
Also, interesting thing about that is some folks in chat have been talking about the Mimic Cave potentially having those flippers if pedestal were mirror, and that would be just absolutely sadistic. The Palace of Darkness will be finished up pretty quickly here for P-Train, having relatively good equipment to do it, and can even do the NMG strats for Helmasaur King, even though we have those vanillas. Probably we'll just use we'll probably just use the silver arrows. Siempe not very far behind. Both of these runners are going to realize right around the same time, I think, that pedestal's got to be the way to go.
Well, Siempe is probably going to have to retroactively forgive all those Helmasaur rage slashes we saw once he finds that mirror on the pedestal. P-Train's going to regret having to come back here and double dip just for that last item. So yeah, this is interesting because he should be killing Helmasaur just about the same time that Siempe kills Trianex, and we're probably going to be within 30 seconds of sync, maybe.
Yeah, that's the wild thing too. To achieve that at about an hour 40 minutes in, I mean, and it's not because these runners are like good or bad at execution or routing. They've been doing pretty sensible plays all throughout. It's just turned out that this is that kind of troll today. Now, I know at least one of our runners has made the play to check the tablet, Ether tablet, with a book. We didn't have Master Sword, so there's no reason that, I believe it was Siempe. One of our runners will definitely not go back for that.
I'm not sure. It might have been P-Train, but I definitely think it was only one of them that went up there. Still, though, yeah, you have to, because they're they're leaving Turtle Rock in the Dark World. They had no way of checking that without climbing all the way back up there. So I think it's actually quicker to check Ped at this point than Ether Tablet.
Yeah, based on saving Quid and Flute, yeah, that makes absolute sense.
All right, here comes the moment of truth. P-Train, where do we go? Well, you cleared Helmosaur, so that means you're thinking only one thing. Ether. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, it could still be, but the Flute selection does suggest that pedestal.
I'm just kidding. That was a starting point.
I mean, that is where you would start either way, I think.
Yeah. Best place in the game to get your health refill. And he's going to 3.
Well, folks, if you were hype about Pedestal an hour and 40 minutes ago, guess what? It has paid off. We are going to check the Pedestal. It's going to be a blind pull, possibly. We have that book, but, I think P-Train has a little bit of style here. Has a little bit of grace. Don't know about a funny face or a DK64 reference, but he does have a pedestal with 3 pendants available to him.
Unfortunately, a blind pedestal pull, I don't think will actually surprise anybody in this case.
Well, at 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 55 seconds, we're going to pick up this sword.
Find the mirror, right?
And
this mirror, right? Please be the mirror. Thank you.
And we look into our own face immediately.
I'm so glad that was the mirror, because I couldn't think of any other spot to go.
Well, folks, it is a pedestal required seed, and we have confirmation of that at 1 hour, 41 minutes. At this point, we just need those flippers, and there's very few places we can find them.
Well, P-Train is getting off to an immediate start and checking those mirror lock locations, checkerboard being one of the quickest ones you can check here. If he doesn't find flips, we're probably headed to Graveyard Ledge, Cave 45, and the Bombos tablet. Mirror unlocked 4 spots, I think. And of course, all of Swamp Palace.
Precisely.
None of Swamp Palace. Oh, Flipper, never mind. I'm going to stop and shut up now.
First check, best check, flippers and checkerboard cave. P-Train is in go mode just 1 minute later.
All right, P-Train, way to ruin the hype.
I can't believe this race. Well, with that knowledge, P-Train will dive right into Swamp Palace. Is going to do Ice Palace immediately following. We'll have a pretty straightforward completion from here on out. Remains to be seen whether we check any extra chests for the sake of finding maybe Tempered Sword. But that's about all we're going to need at this point.
Absolutely. Logically, the players are in go mode. The chances of a sword being in GT is still fairly high, depending on how thorough they want to be. At this point, it really comes down to, do they feel comfortable doing a Master Sword Ganon fight? If they do, then they're going to go mode everything. If they don't, they're probably going to keep checking at least the chests that aren't too far out of the way. So we'll see Waterfall Room, but we're not going to see Left Side Swamp as an example.
But by the looks of it, our runners are actually only about 1.5 minutes different for picking up this pedestal, or maybe even 2 minutes, but that's a very close spread between these racers. Siempe, however, could lose some time checking the wrong item. We get a reaction here, or a lack thereof indicating the reaction. Possibly forgetting, nope, he's just getting his flute out for after.
Right, and hopefully he goes to checkerboard, but even if he doesn't, there aren't too many other spots you can go to, so it's not going to be too long before he finds it. It looks like he is going to checkerboard right away.
Well, good plays from both of our runners, so we're getting a 2-minute separation max for our go modes here. This is exciting.
And P-Train heading down in the swamp now, switching to bombs, so it looks like he's at least going to be checking the easy-to-access chests. in an attempt to find third sword.
I really agree with this decision, particularly in Swamp Palace. It's really valuable to have Tempered over Master Sword for the boss.
Yeah, it remains to be seen whether he'll go out of his way to find to check everything. But these easy to access ones, that's completely reasonable to do. So Siempe now in Go mode as well. Will he do ice or will he do swamp first?
Chad also pointing out that Siempe had some rage slashes there. I gotta feel like, both of these runners have to feel behind. I mean, both of them have made some decisions with these. I want to say Siempe probably has the reason to feel less behind. He didn't wait to do all those pendants, but he's probably feeling rough because he waited 20 minutes to go pick the pedestal up.
Yeah, well, those were joy slashes.
Joy slashes, happy little slashes. There's no such thing as mistakes.
It is true though. If he had gone to the pedestal before Turtle Rock and picked up the mirror, and then decided to pick up the flippers, he could have also done Go mode Turtle Rock. That would have still given him the sword being on Trinex. So he might think that was a missed opportunity. Fortunately for him, both runners made the same decisions, and we only have the 2 minutes or so.
What's interesting is that both of our runners seem to be a little on edge, possibly tournament race edges getting to them, just because both of them jumped into Swamp Palace without draining the dam and forgetting for a moment there. So they must feel like they're at a pretty tense moment in the race.
Yeah, and keep in mind, being in the 0-2 stage, only the winner can continue and still have a chance to progress into the bracket phase. So this is an elimination round of sorts for the players. We saw P-Train check the vanilla compass room, but not the left side. So it does look like he's doing the if it's on the way, I'll check it, but if it's not, I'm going to skip it route.
Something else of note here, I mean, obviously both of our runners are picking up the chests that are along the way. I would think that it's possible neither of these runners are feeling comfortable with their Master Sword Ganon. And if that's the case, if one of them ends up being forced to be in that position, this could be a potential for a lead change, even at Ganon.
Yes, fortunately, having the silver arrows saves them 20 of their 24 phase 4 sword spins. So that makes that significantly easier. But these runners coming from their NNG experience, you always have tempered sword when you do Ganon. So Master Sword is something that you don't necessarily intuitively practice.
And it is something, whether you're trying to do that speedrun or randomizer, you should practice as many different Ganon fights as you can. The RNG alone is something worth being ready for. But just having the different equipment, it's amazing what situations you'll find yourself in. P-Train here realizing that it's going to take a lot of slashes to kill these, opting not to do the Menu Simulator 2018 though.
With Master Sword, you can kill it at the puff in 2 slashes, which is definitely faster than the menu to hammer. With Fighter Sword, you have to make the choice because you need both of your spins to hit the eye puff in order to kill it. So that's where we typically see the hammer strats. I like the 2 sword slashes. I think that's it's consistent, it's efficient, and it's safe.
And my menuing's slow, so I wouldn't want to do that either. One thing you can potentially do to speed up the fight, though, if you're going to do Master Sword slashes, is you could try to hookshot 2 of them at once. That's a really good way to get extra hits.
Absolutely, that works great with the slashes or the spins. You can potentially take some hits from Argus or one of the puffs if you're not quick enough. But making excellent use of the silver arrows in the second phase, and takes a single silver arrow to kill him.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hit that silver arrow because you can only have 1 arrow on screen at a time, no matter what type of arrow it is. But it's always a 1-hit kill for Argus, so smart use of it there. You could also do Fire Rod and Sword Spins, but we only have Master Sword, so being pretty straightforward to do. I like the use of silver arrows there.
So silver arrows is faster. Alternatively, the 4 Master Sword Spins. It's really only, I think it's maybe 15 seconds longer. It's not too bad.
But with that, P-Train will head into Ice Palace, and Siempe hot on his heels with the Argus fight coming up. Although this is slower than what we're used to seeing from Margus, of course. But, I mean, that's a really close separation. I would say that Siempe even gained some time here.
I do believe he did. I didn't notice if he decided to skip the compass chest, maybe, to pick up some time, or if it was simply execution. But it does appear that the gap was closed a little bit. But Siempe choosing to use the menu strat, so we get a nice side-by-side comparison here of which option's faster.
I would say in this scenario, if you're going to do the menu strat, this is where it matters more to try and get 2 of them at once, because you're going to use a lot less menus if you do that. But it is hard to hit him with hammer, so, you know, this is perfectly reliable. As long as you get through the fight, that's what matters.
P-Train almost decided to go for that first chest in ice, but noped out of it. Maybe he's decided, you know, he's going to just straight go mode the whole palace. We saw him check some of the easy spots in the swamp. Didn't find the sword. And, you know, didn't go back and check the long spots.
And there's, of course, the possibility that, you know, not really worrying too much about, you know, Tempered Sword here in Ice Palace. Even though it's nice to have Tempered for Cold Stare, we have a ton of magic to work with.
Absolutely. That first chest in ice and the chest in the freezer room are really the only ones that are kind of like along the path.
Well, so routing is an interesting decision to make here in Ice Palace. We can do the bomb jump to do the fastest possible version of this dungeon. It looks like the lineup's good for P-Train there.
He gets on his very first try. That's a tricky bomb jump to get, but unfortunately he falls off and he's gonna have to do it again. Poor guy. A little too close on that one.
I've had that happen way too many times. Nice thing though is that the skull pot's no longer in the way, so if he gets the bomb jump on his next successful attempt, he'll probably slide right past that spot.
Siempe giving us a quick look at his bottle inventory there. He's got a green, a blue, and a fairy, so he's probably not going to have to make another trip to the potion shop.
And I would hope he doesn't at this point. He can't tell how close this race is. Neither of these racers can, and of course we have that privilege. But this is a very tight scenario. Ice Palace is the fastest dungeon in the game to go mode, so if it looks like there's some kind of head start here or big advantage, it's not as pronounced as you probably think it is.
Siempe having a little trouble with those penguins. Probably used to having the Tempered Sword and using the NMG sword spin strats. Might be feeling a little bit under-geared only having Master Sword.
Absolutely, and typically in the game you would be expected to have, you know, access to the Tempered Sword at this point. You probably would have done so after doing 3 and 4. You would typically have the blue mail as we do now from this dungeon, from that chest there on P-Train's screen. We'd have Fire Rod. You could have Bombos as well. And then Cane of Samaria, if you don't want to do the bomb jump, will allow you to hit this switch at the bottom. Interesting enough, Siempe is going to check these chests, and if there's no Tempered Sword in this dungeon that he checks, this would be a time loss for him.
Just a key. We did see P-Train, he did check the chest in the freezer room, which was just the map, and he wasn't able to check the big chest because he did, you know, without the big key. You know, choosing, most likely making the wise choice not to do the full clear, heading directly to Cold Stare, and then he will be done with ice.
Ooh, he takes a hug. So the tough thing about Cold Stare is that if you have, like, say, green mail, you're going to take 4 hearts of damage from hugging the Cold Stare. So in this position, P-Train's got to refill magic. There's no safe way to do this fight otherwise.
One of the safer Cold Stare strategies that you don't see too often, if you are under geared with your sword, like P-Train is, you can hug the top wall, and as long as you sidestep the ice blocks, you will not get hit by the ricochet. So you can just wait for the cold puffs to come to you and get them with sword spins. Probably one of the only ways to realistically do it with Fighter Sword. Definitely makes it very doable with Master Sword.
That's a good point.
It's a safe strat, you know, to avoid a death.
And you can also use sword beam strats, another uncommonly seen technique. If you have full health and you have sword beams, you can actually collide those sword beams with fire rod shots to get double hits on the shield or the shell. But now that we have all of the dungeons have been completed, this is a nice thing to see in a seed. We have a game that we like to play here in Ganon's Tower. So just want to briefly kind of explain it. There are 22 chests in Ganon's Tower that can have the big key. That big key is what we're going to need to head up to the top of Ganon's Tower. We like to play a game here on the Speed Gaming channels where we guess what that chest is going to be. So you get your guesses in chat once you see that start command. You have 1 to 22 to guess. If you want to be on that leaderboard that we have, you just need to be a subscriber to any of the Speed Gaming channels or having donated 250 bits at some point across those channels. It is game just for fun, though, so if you want to participate regardless, by all means do. Do you have a guess here for the big key chest today, Tier?
Well, when I'm playing the guessing game, I always guess number 6 because in the fall tournament, it seemed to almost always be 6. When I'm commentating, I say Random Room. I love Random Room. It's my favorite room in the tower. The Randomizer community is such a great group of people that we took it upon ourselves to name a room after ourselves. I just love that. It's so much fun. And it's a location that I did not even know existed before Randomizer. So I go for Random Room. How about you?
Well, I have a lot of love and faith for Bob's, so if we're going right then left, that would be chest number 14, but Bob's chest, the one right before Ice Armos, that's my guy today.
All right, well then, for your sake, hopefully there's nothing valuable on the torch.
Right. But so, folks, we have until he enters Ganon's Tower to get your guesses in. Keep throwing them in there. It's the first person to guess the right number. Of course, amongst those subscribers and donators for the leaderboard, but by all means, see if you can get your guesses correct. You have about a 4 or 5% chance of being right. And those of you who say 22, you're hoping for the tile room, I think. That's kind of sadistic.
Yeah, we're seeing an interesting thing over on Siempe's side. Doing the full Ice Palace clear, definitely wants to get those items. Whether it's because he had a routing error and he's recovering and needs the keys, or is really, really hoping to find a sword here. I'm not sure about, but this is going to cost a little bit of time.
Well, if we do find that tempered, and if P-Train has trouble with Master Sword, there could be a chance to save some time here, but we're going to get our first check, which is a small key here on the right side, and another small key.
So 2 small keys, good reason to continue right, and P-Train is heading right.
Yep, this is pretty commonly done when you have at least 1 small key. The second one, though, does get you through this door as well, so we don't have to check the tile room on our way through. Though, if it ends up being that would be the best case scenario for Siempe here. Meanwhile, Siempe is going to get a couple extra item checks here, finding a small key. We're still not finding that sword, and that's really priority number 1 at this point.
Fortunately, P-Train has a little bit of trouble with those conveyor belts and misses the door. It's going to have to come back up here and start over.
I learned recently there is a way that you can do this room without the fire rod if you're really good at bomb jumps on conveyor belts.
There absolutely is. I've seen it done, and the runner who did it said that he paused and watched the tutorial in the race.
Which, by the way, is race legal. You can do that. So if you, if any of you folks out there want help with dark rooms or something like that, if it's just a general tutorial, you're allowed to have that open. It's the same thing with maps.
Absolutely. So we got 3, 4, 5, and 6 in this room. Bombos, no key, no big key.
Well, there's the rogue bombos that we've been looking for. Would have been nice to have for Cold Stare. Not a problem, though.
So it's going to do full right, or it's going to mirror? It's going to mirror. So we're going to see our first left side chests.
Yeah, so mirroring's a pretty smart decision there. You can go full side right to check all the way back to Ice Armos, but if you're going for the item density, you're going to keep going this way. So I believe that's chest number 8, right?
7.
Item 7. Yes, it is. Okay. I gotta work on my counting.
Yeah, if you go full right side to Ice Armos, you have to deal with that last room on the right side, which is just a really, really painful room with the fire bars. It's good. 8, 9, 10, 11 coming up. You taking advantage of that bombos to clear this room. I like that.
Yeah, and it's going to use less magic than doing the same thing with Fire Rod, but that's 8, isn't it?
That is 8.
Not only that, but he has the small key that he's looking for, several of them, in order to go up to the top. So, holy smokes! I mean, he's in a good position to, finish up this race.
Congratulations to Link8 for being the first person to guess 8.
Well, with that, we're going to head into Mimic's rooms. Siempe here having to refill magic just like P-Train did to finish up this Cold Stare fight, having a lot to work with. Should have no problems finishing this up with a Fire Rod.
Nah, he burned down those Cold Stare puffs, no problem. Quite a little bit of rage in those Fire Rod shots, having full cleared the dungeon and not picked up anything of value.
Yeah, that's a really frustrating situation. I mean, when you have so much of the world completed, you got to think, well, the sword's got to be here. I mean, where else could it be? But we also know that Bombo's Tablet's a possibility. Ganon's Tower could have had items that we didn't check. So that could be one thing that could help Siempe if P-Train really struggled, if that was what ended up transpiring here. Then Siempe could find a sword in the left half and actually could be a difference here. But as of right now, P-Train not having that much trouble.
We've seen P-Train fluctuate back and forth a little bit, sometimes deciding that there were chests that he wanted to check, other times deciding that he didn't quite feel like going out of the way for him. If he really felt that he needed a tempered sword, I would expected him to have kept going in Ganon's Tower, picked up the Firebar chest, the Randomizer room chests, maybe even the ice armor's chests. By skipping those, I think he's telling us that he feels really comfortable doing it with what he's got at this point.
I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. And at 2 hours in, crossing that 2 hour mark, we're walking into the gauntlet. So in a commanding position to take this his first victory of the tournament, Siempe has a lot of ground to cover here. Now, the gauntlet here is full of very difficult rooms. If you've practiced this, it's not that bad, but this is, compared to most of the combat of the game, one of the most difficult sections of the game.
Yeah, we saw, that's a nicely timed fairy there for P-Train. We saw very similar routes between the players. P-Train actually had the slightly less fortunate route, having to go back and double dip pod, but other than that, they mostly completed everything in. I think that was the only double dip we've seen from either runner.
Well, looking at this, this has got to be a really tense, nervous moment for both runners. Siempe, 2 hours in, hasn't made it to Ganon's Tower yet. P-Train, 2 hours in, halfway up Ganon's Tower, probably expecting that dot done any second now.
Absolutely. Anytime you pass the 2 hour mark, you're always feeling behind, even if you've had flawless execution. That's just the nature of the seed.
In a cruel world, it is possible to find both of those sword upgrades in the upstairs.
True. And like I said, P-Train, having gone back and done the double dip and pod, that's a little bit extra stress. Knowing that it was required. But it's surprising that we had 10 dungeons cleared and there was only one double dip, and it was an optional one at that. I'm not sure I've ever seen that.
It's also really interesting to note that despite this being like a 2+ hour seed, we did clear every dungeon. So these runners did very well for what they were given today. I'm pretty impressed by their execution.
Not only did we clear every dungeon, we saw all but 3 mirror-blocked overworld locations across both runners.
And Fighter Sword up until the end of Trinex. Yeah,
they've been making do. They're in a nice position with health at this point, and they've had the blue mail very early on, but that second sword was a troll.
Well, so I think it's a great time to remind folks, they put on such a great show for us, and clearly people to watch throughout the rest of this tournament, whether they make it to brackets or not. Siempe, interestingly enough, getting his 4th item for the big key. I recommend you guys give them a follow. These folks are going to be doing a lot more really fun races to watch. I'm very excited to see whichever one wins, through the rest of their tournament journey, and if the loser continues to, race, that'd be great, because I'm more likely to race against them, to be honest with you. Fantastic show all around.
Absolutely agree. Give them a follow. There are links to their Twitch channels in the Twitch chat. So it's just a click and another click. So
Well, P-Train's almost done here.
yeah, we did see P-Train check the 2 items in the mini helmet store room, and of course the one here in the anti-fairy room. Only one more chest left that could potentially hold a sword. Right, come up here after Moldorm 2. I would truly love to see a tempered sword at this point. I don't wish Master Sword upon my worst enemies.
Yeah, that would be a pretty hilarious find. Bad news for Siempe compared to P-Train, but, hilarious nonetheless.
Unfortunately, takes a fall there. It's a little bit of a time loss, but he's got a big enough lead at this point that it's going to take a lot more than one more on fall.
That's true. We have all of the gauntlet left for Siempe. Ooh, wow, another fall. All of the gauntlet left and the torch rooms, but, I mean, P-Train could potentially, with some nerves here, keep a lot of time going for Siempe.
Yeah, a second fall, that adds to it, and of course it's a third fall, and that's very unfortunate for P-Train.
The other thing for us to consider too is Ganon falls. If we don't find that tempered in the next chest, that's an interesting scenario. Oh, we never checked Pyramid Fairy, did we?
No, we didn't. And a fourth fall. Unfortunately, Siempe is gaining up some very valuable time at this point.
Yeah, making it all the way to Lammolis 2, which is the first half of the gauntlet, the second half being more puzzle rooms than anything. We're going to opt to switch to the hammer here. I agree with P-Train's choice.
Yeah, P-Train was attempting to excellent hammer Moldorm 2 there, so well done for P-Train. He was opting to use sword spins. One of the other safe options is to do dashes. It takes a little bit more time, and he just finds that small piece of heart.
Well, having finished that up, though, you're going to make his way to Aghanim 2. Siempe actually just had a really nice Lammolis 2, getting a 1 cycle, which is really nice. So the gap between these runners is shrinking. Aghanim 2, another fight that can waste you some time. We want 6 hits total on the actual boss here. Possibly a double there. It looked like a double.
Yeah, not an excellent initial pattern, and this second phase is quite off as well. Got hit by the blue ball. Nice lineup here in phase 3. And maybe a triple.
Yeah, that was definitely a triple. That was really nicely done. So he needs one more, I believe.
There you go. Excellent Aga 2 for P-Train.
Alrighty, folks. 2 hours and 7 minutes. We'll have that Ganon fight going into. This is a very tense moment for P-Train. Still not seeing that dot done, knowing he's on Master Sword. Possibly thinking his opponent might have found that tempered.
We're looking at 12 Master Sword spins for each of the first 2 phases of Ganon. Not so difficult for the first phase, but with those fire bats, it's very difficult in phase 2. 1 spin for each of the 4 teleports in phase 4, and then with silver arrows, he simply needs to do 1 spin to stun Ganon, and then do traditional silver arrow strats for phase 4.
Now we saw there he tried to get a spin in between the Trident and Ganon himself, allowing him to get an extra spin. Another thing that this fight is unusual for Master Sword Silvers is that inventory management and magic management becomes pretty important. We could use Cape to try to get some safe hits, but, well, we have 2 blue potions, a green potion, and a fairy, so, I mean, as long as he uses his potions intelligently, he should be in good shape here.
Ganon has given him excellent positioning, though, lining up against the wall 3 times in a row, letting him get doubles on each of those spins. So I think this should be his last hit for phase 1. And yeah, he's in phase 2 now.
Well, folks, if you wanted a close race, we are probably 2 phases basically separate here of Ganon, because if Siempe has a good Aghanim 2 fight, this is a very slow fight for a slow round for P-Train. He's going to use the Cape trying to take advantage of some free hits.
Siempe using the dash strat gets through Moldorm 1 on his Moldorm 2 on his first attempt. Too many Moldorms, too many attempts, but catches up valuable time there, moving into Aga 2 on his side.
Also of note for P-Train, he was trying to do Master Sword slashes, which are not going to do anything to Ganon here. He wasted about half of his magic meter trying to attempt that, so he could actually run out of magic in this fight.
Yeah, Ganon is getting in less than ideal positioning in this phase. This is the phase where you most desperately want to get those doubles in and avoid as many of these bad cycles. But he gets to phase 3.
Yeah, this is an important juncture for him. With 2 potions left, he is in a pretty decent position, but he's got to be very careful. Those fire bats can send him off the ledge if he's not careful.
Fortunately, he only needs to hit them 4 times. Unfortunately, those fire bats, as long as you're not moving when the bat hits you, it will not knock you off the edge. But you do have to be careful. And he's so far he's having a little trouble getting a hit in. He just scores his first hit.
Well, with that, Siempe has finished up Aghanim 2, so we're both going to be in the Ganon fight. Other thing about those fire bats, since you brought that up, that's a very good point. Don't touch the D-pad. If you actually do press a direction, it'll send you in the opposite direction that you're holding, so that oftentimes knocks people off the ledge. Uh-oh, P-Train has missed Torch Glitch trying to get this, and he has plenty of magic to work with, shouldn't be an issue, but having a little bit of trouble with his first arrow, and missing the second.
Unfortunately, Siempe doesn't realize how close he is and is farming for a little bit of safety before jumping in. Train lining up a nice position for a double, but doesn't go for it, unfortunately. Gotta be very careful lighting those torches. If Ganon is on you and you light a torch, you are going over the side.
Just one more arrow to go. And that'll do it. P-Train will finish up Ganon in a very tense fight here. Both of our runners on Ganon, I mean, they gotta both have their hearts racing right now.
Absolutely. Very, very close fight. So congratulations to P-Train on pulling out the victory. That gives him an official Speed Racing TV time of 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 58 seconds. Chat, get your GGs in for P-Train.
Also a very appropriate message from the Triforce gods there. Meow, 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 meow. Oh my god. All right, we're going to see if we can get P-Train in for an interview while we are finishing up with Siempe. I think we should probably wait a moment to do that interview until Siempe's done here. Maybe get both of them in at the same time.
Absolutely. We'll try to get them set up, and we'll wait to pull them in until they're both done. Siempe has excellent positioning with the keep here. This is what you want to see with a Master Sword Phase 2. Get him right behind the wall, get the keep, and he got 6 hits in that one position, so he's right into Phase 3.
Well, Phase 3 being pretty much wrapped up here. If he gets Torch Glitch, this will be easier to finish up quickly. Not as important when you have silvers, but definitely good to do.
Yeah, he's a little bit low on magic, so he's deciding to set up for it rather than use the 2 fire rod shots every time. The other issue with missing the torch glitch is just the time it takes to light the second torch. The first one it's like it's halfway gone.
Gonna opt to hit Ganon after he warps. Smart decision just to make sure you're gonna get him. Should be able to get this one as well, and can get a double here.
So 3 hits in, he's just got 1 more hit to do, and then they'll be done his race.
And it looks like that'll do it.
Very good, very nice. It's a little hard to get those doubles. Once he's against the wall, you can't score any more hits. So they take a lot of practice to position. But 4 singles is absolutely satisfactory. A nice fire rod and a dash through the door. Congratulations, Siempe. It gives him an official time of 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 22 seconds. We only had a 3-minute difference between the runners, less than 3 minutes. Very close race.
Well, with that, we should be just about ready to bring our runners in for a quick chat about this race. Looks like both of them are in the waiting room, so I'm going to bring in both of them now. welcome to both of you, and GG, what an incredible race.
Congratulations, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
You might have your game audio bleeding into your mic, P-Train, but P-Train, you have won by less than 2 minutes here.
Appreciate it. I don't really know how to. I'm trying to fix my mic. I'm not really sure what to do to fix that.
You could mute your emulator sound. I think that'll probably work. But so with the race, I mean, I got to get your thoughts on this. You know, you find that mirror at the pedestal. Where is your head at that point? We'll get that sorted out in just a moment. But Siempe, are you also with us as well?
Yeah, I'm here also.
All right, so I gotta ask you. I mean, you find that mirror. Where is your head at that point?
Really don't know. Yeah, I just went crazy. Never expected to be there.
You ended up doing a full clear on your first trip to Palace of Darkness, and you had pedestal access for a while. Were you thinking there was an item there, or were you just picking up the pendant because it was convenient routing?
Just because it was convenient routing, and didn't want to go to the pedestal at that moment because I had some other options. But yeah, it might have been better to check it earlier.
Well, it wouldn't have saved you that much more than potentially go moding Turtle Rock. You were still able to get through ice and swamp very quickly. You didn't have to double dip a single dungeon, and you had to clear all 10 of them. That is impressive.
I think it was just luck, to be honest.
I was counting items in pod, and I got my last item. Or I didn't mirror, but I save and quit out. I was like, okay, I'm done with pod. And then when I got done with Meyer, I was like, I must have left an item in pod. And then whenever I went in there, I realized the big key chest couldn't be an item. There, so I'm like, well, let's just hold the key. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a pendant. I was like, oh shoot. So I'm glad I got to it. I was really worried though once I discovered that, and I left on a pendant. I didn't full clear pod while I was there.
Yeah, both of you guys had the book fairly early, but didn't actually check the pedestal text. It was both blind pulls.
It was too much out of the way for me. Didn't want to go there just to check it.
It's a bit of a catch-22. You want that mirror just to check it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wanted to check it when I had to mirror when I went to Skullwood, but unfortunately I didn't have it, so yeah. And there was the mirror on the pedestal.
Well,
that scared me because on my tracker, the moment I clicked that mirror, my whole dark world lit up green, and I was like, oh shoot, I know where I'm going to go next.
Well, you guys both went directly to Checkerboard Cave and picked up your flippers. That must have at least been satisfying. I saw some rage slashes, but you can't deny that was nice to see the progression.
Yeah, not only that, but you had pretty much the same spread that we finished with at that time. So, everybody here in chat and commentary, I'm sure our tracker was also hype as well. Wolflink, thanks for doing that, by the way. But yeah, I mean, there was an incredible way to finish this race. I also want to ask you guys about the start of the race. How'd you feel finding that hammer in Uncle Hut?
I was pretty happy to see it.
I was very happy with that, and I think we also got Blue Melt early, and I want to say Half Magic came kind of early, so I was like, sweet, this is my kind of seed. Like, it's giving me all the safeties. So I felt very confident going on. Also, I was glad it wasn't a bomb seed. Kind of nice knowing that I had a reliable source of damage, like leaving Link's house.
Well, what I want to ask you guys about is how you felt finding that the boots led to the shovel, which led to the silver arrows.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was always thinking about going to library to get the shovel, just to make sure I wouldn't forget it. But I was happy I went there.
One of the items I always want to find is silver arrows. I hate a silverless Ganon. Granted, this was actually my first Master Sword Ganon I've ever done. So that was exciting, but yeah, I was extremely relieved to find silvers, and I was hoping that it might have given me a leg up, because that was a chain I wasn't sure another racer might follow.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up, P-Train, and I wanted to ask you what both of you guys, different questions, but regarding your decision-making process, once you found the flippers, regarding which chests you were going to open. Initially, you guys both opened the easily accessible chests in Swamp Palace, but skipped the left side slower ones. In Ice Palace, P-Train, you looked like you were going to open some chests, but then go moded it. While Siempe, you ended up doing a full clear of ice. So, what were you like? How far out of your way were you thinking to go to get tempers? I'll start with P-Train. What were your thoughts?
So definitely anything that was on my way, like if it didn't require this huge detour to get, I wanted to open it. In Ice Palace, literally what happened was I couldn't remember if the Master Sword spin attack one-shotted the enemies in that ice room. And the moment I did the spin attack and they didn't die, I was just nope. And I left. And I had made my mind up that I'm going to try a silverless Ganon. I'm going to open what I can on my way. Also knowing that I had Ganon's Tower. So it was my hope that I might find a sword in Ganon's Tower as well, which unfortunately didn't happen. But that was my logic behind it.
That kind of leads into the other half of the question. Siempe, with Ice Palace, was that kind of why you were full clearing that?
No, it's because I can't do the bomb jump. That's the only reason why I did the full clear.
Well, hey, you can always do the hover strap.
That's also something I can't do, unfortunately.
You and me both.
I wish I could do it.
I did the bomb jump, and then I fell off, and then it took me like, 7 or 8 tries to get it the second time? Like getting a little worried there myself.
Well, that was unfortunate. That Ice Palace time was, there was no value in Ice Palace, and that was quite a time sink. P-Train was having some issues with Moldorm too at the end there, and Siempe, you were closing the gap very well. Like I said, it was really up in the air there until the last few minutes.
Not only that, but the two of you were on Ganon at the same time, which was really exciting for us to see, at least, from a viewer standpoint. I'm sure the viewers out there were very excited about it. And, actually, while we have everybody here, I do want to mention to everybody, please follow these racers. Despite the win and loss here, they're both really good runners. They've clearly put on a great display for us today. And I want to see the rest of the tournament, but definitely want to remind everybody, the best way to catch everything that they do is to give them a follow here on Twitch and, show them their support. But I have another interesting question for you, P-Train. You're the only one who picked up a shield in this seed. What led you to taking the one in Spectacle Rock?
I am garbage at laser bridge dashes. I picked it up in the hopes that it would eventually turn into a mirror shield, which it did not. And I think I got like one laser dash, and then I just used the Cane of Burna to do the rest of it. But that was the reason.
You called it, Yuta.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like very interesting that it turned out that way, but you ended up doing 2 actually laser dashes, no problems. So that was pretty impressive to see. But yeah, having those safety items later on, good to have. Whether it's like an early decision to make. I also want to point out that there's a 3-minute difference in time and only 3 item collection difference in the 2 racers, 173 and 170 between you, which is kind of crazy. The only major Y item difference was Siempe, you didn't see the bombos on the right side of Ganon's Tower.
Okay, yeah. So it's not much of use over there, so it's not a big thing.
And the other weird thing too is once the two of you had Dark World access, you guys pretty much were going the same route with rare exception up until about Hype Cave, and we started to see divergence, but everything leading back to the same places, doing similar checks at different times within the same logical constraints. This was a very interesting seed to watch.
I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well, so I want
Absolutely.
to ask you guys, well, the Siempe first, since you started with P-Train last, do you have any words for your fans out there?
Well, I don't think I have many fans, but yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed the race. Yeah, GG to P-Train. Small difference, but I'm pretty sure he did pretty well.
Well, you definitely have two fans here on the casting couch. I'm sure our tracker feels the same way, and the speed gaming audience definitely had a show today to see. So we greatly appreciate that you would join us for the race and also this interview. Open the floor to P-Train for the same thing. Do you have any remarks you'd like to share with the audience?
Thanks for watching. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I'm glad it was a good show. I'm looking forward to watching the VOD later.
There were some exciting moments.
Siempe.
Well, you'll definitely enjoy it. Congratulations again to both of the runners. P-Train, moving on, staying in the tournament. Siempe, I hope you decide to continue on with the tournament. Just for fun. It's we enjoy the show that both of you guys put on, and hope that you guys enjoy doing the runs for us. I don't have any other questions. You guys have any other further thoughts before we wrap it up?
I hate Moldorm.
Well established.
He wasn't that
Appreciate
bad
y'all's
for me
commentary.
today.
Oh, actually, yeah, I think you did have separate Moldorm falls, one to Moldorm 1 and one to Moldorm 2. That's interesting. Well, so I just want to extend some of the same remarks about, thanking everybody for tuning into this. This is definitely not the end of Randomizer for either of these runners. Lots of tournament left to get some races out of the way, and of course, some extra practice in the Randomizer before further tournaments. P-Train will elevate to 1 and 2 today. Siempe down to 0 and 3. But so there's the best way to keep up with this tournament is to follow all of the speed gaming channels, speed gaming 1 through 6, and a link to the past Randomizer 1 through 4. I think that's about all we have so far for this channel today. Tiru, have you seen any other matches on the schedule?
There are let's see, it's 6:44. There's a race on Speed Gaming 3 and 5 at the moment, and there was one scheduled to start at 6:30 on Speed Gaming 1. That wraps up the rest of the day.
Well, that's exciting. So definitely want to encourage you guys to check out those races. I know the Imosara one will be very exciting to see. I haven't actually seen Don Venier. But just want to thank everybody from Speed Gaming for making this possible for us. A great opportunity for our runners and ourselves. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. Anything you want to close us out with here, Tiru?
No, of course. Just a thank you to the Speed Gaming staff. Thank you to our tracker, Wolflink0730, and my co-commentator, Yuda, and I'm going to have to ask you to pronounce your full name.
Not a problem.
It was a pleasure joining you here today for this wonderful race, and I'll make my last thought to the viewers that if you enjoy watching this, you will definitely enjoy playing this as well. It is a wonderful community, and it's free to get started. Give Randomizer a run, and hopefully we'll see some more of you guys in the fall tournament. That's it for me. Thank you, Yuda.
Well, I want to echo those same sentiments for Tiru. I've been Uday Monistic. I'm joined by Tiru. This has been another exciting Randomizer match. From everybody here at Speed Gaming, folks, see you next mission.